Hello, beautiful world, and we are now live. I always
Hello.
enjoy doing the countdown. So nice to be here again with Adam James. We are supposed to have somebody else with us, but he is not with us. So we are just going to sit here and just chat. We already were, but yeah. So you were telling me about a very interesting professor named Janice Fiamengo.
Oh
Sounds like
yeah,
flamingo.
she's incredible. I can't remember what her. I think psychology. No, she's English or English literature or that. I think that's what her professorship was in. Um, and similar to yourself, she was a feminist and a liberal feminist.
Hmm.
And I think she was. I think she's a contemporary. I'm not sure how old she is. It's dangerous guessing the age. I get
Yeah,
myself
don't guess
in
a
trouble.
woman's age.
Um, but she's yeah, she'd be somewhere on the at the Camila Palia's um, age group, and
Generation, yeah.
yeah, I think she explains in her lectures that she kept butting heads with the anti intellectual or academic standard. Um, Similar to what you might hear Richard Dawkins express his frustrations with religious zealots. She explains that
Mm.
that's what she was coming up against with feminism. And she did a massive study into it, and it is impressive, man. Like her body of work and the level of detail she goes into in addressing feminism. And because I still held the idea, even probably only a year ago, maybe two, that feminism was good at the start, um, and then it got corrupted. That idea,
Yeah.
uh, and Janice goes into extraordinary detail to explain why she believes objectively that that isn't true. And yeah, so that's she's probably the main person who guided me on my journey um, to what I believe now and understand now. So yeah, she's fantastic. I think.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely have to look her up. I mean, it's just really important, I think, to have like especially women
Oh,
who are kind of speaking out against, feminism and wokeism. And yeah, I'm quite, it's interesting how I haven't heard of her. I mean, when I was researching like feminist books or any kind of book which criticizes like feminism, I was really finding it quite difficult because that's why I created this egalitarian reading list on Goodreads. It's like a list I created of books
oh,
which, yeah, I don't know if I've, it's probably in the description
I
box of my
went
videos,
through and
but
just added a bunch of your books to read, but I didn't realize you had a formal list. That's cool. I'll check that out.
oh yeah, no, definitely. I mean, because it's really important because like so the ones I've read so far, The Flip Side of Feminism by Suzanne Benker, that's really good. She's very, very conservative, like socially, economically. I couldn't relate to a lot of her views, but I think the
Mhm.
second chapter specifically is very important because the second chapter is when she goes into how feminism. So she starts off by saying feminists want people to think that feminism began in the 19th century with the suffragettes, but actually it didn't. Like these were family oriented women and they were very, marriage. They were very pro like traditional family values. Most of them were Christians. They were not fighting to smash the patriarchy. They were not, and they were not pro abortion. Abortion as well. I don't like Benker's views on abortion. I think this is she has this very, I think social conservatism in America has this very like Christian oriented aspect
Mhm.
to it, which the kind of some things I'm not really keen on. But regardless, she made an important point. She was talking about what you and I were talking about earlier, how feminism is really essential extension of cultural Marxism and how
Yeah.
Marx was, this idea of like men and women being two separate classes is very Marxist. And Betty Friedan and Gloria Steinem, the two women who founded feminism, and both of them had these very like Marxist views. Like Friedan was involved. I mean, she was involved with the American Communist Party, right? Or I believe so anyway. She had these kind of links. I'm pretty sure she was involved with the American Communist Party, some of the radical left or whatever. And Steinem was also, they were very much both involved with the kind of very extreme left of center American politics. And that's where feminism gets a lot of its kind of views from, this very extreme idea of wanting to, this idea of revolutionizing society. And it's like, that's so different from classical liberalism, which is essentially, because liberalism is about, equality, independence, liberty, freedom, maximizing the individual. The idea of liberty is about, do what you want to do as long as you don't hurt other people. Like liberals are not for this idea of revolution is a very, very Marxist thing. Like liberals want evolution, but we don't want revolution. You know what I mean? Like a liberal wants society to improve and progress, but we don't want to just tear shit down in this really strange Marxist dystopia. It's actually funny because earlier today I was with a friend and we were talking about, so I've got this friend and she's married. She's a wife and a mother. Like me, she's an author as well. And she was saying how she feels like feminism was very much anti-family, which it was, and how society nowadays doesn't really seem to value family, mothers. She actually told me this crazy thing. She said that this hospital she was at, no, sorry, she wasn't at the hospital, but she was wanting to go there, and they refer to mothers as birthing people.
No.
What? Like the amount of disrespect. Like, do you remember when you and I did our interview? You were talking about how all of society since the dawn of time has really been about fundamentally prioritizing mothers, especially humans specifically. And it's like, defending and supporting mothers, supporting, so mothers can raise children. It's like, oh, sure, I'm not a mother, but like, and you have this whole thing is really, really ridiculous because it's like attack on motherhood and on marriage. I mean, it's So so my main thing I was saying earlier is like books critique, just to circle back, books critiquing feminism. So Suzanne Venker, Flip Side of Feminism, it's a very good book. I think, regardless, even though, I mean, she criticizes Obama, she says positive things about Fox News. Some of it's just so cringe, but, again, like, definitely the second chapter when she's like, talks about feminism 101, and she talks about how, what's it called? The contraceptive, the Equal Pay Act, and the rise of technological advancements, the washing machine, the oven, like these things actually made life easier for American or Anglophonic women. And then, so Free Women, Free Men by Camille Paglia is a great book. Who Stole Feminism by Christina Hoff Sommers. Myth of Male Power, which you and I just talked about, that should be required reading for everyone. I have The Feminist Lie. I've just bought that by a man called Bob Hope. The Rational Male, I'd say, by Rollo Tomasi, like that's a pretty good one because, I think as well, like he doesn't really, it's not really political, it's more kind of talking about, relationships, but there's all these kind of, I guess, ways to kind of critique the kind of feminist ideology, which is rooted in this idea of, patriarchy, gender as a social construct, being very anti-marriage, anti-motherhood, anti-family, anti-men, and I feel like I just said so many things. That's the problem with being so talkative.
Oh, yeah, it's great. Yeah, I think, and it's the identity politics. It's nothing. So in their worldview, we should not be talking. I'm a white man, you're a black woman, so that we are
conflict with each other.
And we exist only as a group, not as an individual.
No, it's very anti-individualism. It's very anti-liberal. It's very anti-humanism. Have you heard of Dr. Deborah Soh?
Oh, you just dropped out for a sec. What was that?
Have you heard of Dr. Deborah Soh?
No.
Yeah, so she's great. So she, I don't know if she still identifies as a feminist, but she's definitely a liberal. So her book, The End of Gender, That book again should be required reading for everyone. It's very, very accessible. She essentially talks about, she basically just debunks this whole nonsensical gender ideology, and she has very, I'd say her views are like 90% very similar to me. She's very pro LGBT, she's very pro trans, she's very liberal, she's very progressive, she's very like left wing, not fucking left wing, like, you know, classically liberal, but she's anti woke and anti like all of this nonsense. And you know, I think she, you know, I really, really commend her as well, because her book, you know, there's like, I think the second chapter, she's like, there are only two genders, male and female. There, I said it. And I love the way she speaks as well, because she's a sexologist. Like, she's you know, studies, I don't know if she studied neuroscience or biology or whatever, but something scientifically related. And you know, she done a lot of fucking research and she knows her stuff. And you know, people should be listening to reputable academics who have actually things, not these bloody, because we also need to actually look at, like, when we're quoting somebody, what's their background. So for example, if we go back to Friedan and Steinem, you know, Friedan, her background was in Marxism. Steinem, she was, so as I remember, she was part of it was either the CIA or the FBI, but she was working with them. Both of them had these links with the American radical left, and you have to take that into account. Or Kate Millett as well. Like, I started reading her book, Sexual Politics, which I actually heard about from Camille Paglia's book. And Sexual Politics is really, I can see, it was published, I think, in the 1960s, 67, I think. And that's where, you know, this whole idea of patriarchy, gender as a social construct, like, that was a really, really, like, really cemented that within feminism. Like, that book, I'd say, is one of the most seminal texts of feminism, and you can really see the wokeism pouring out from the page. Like, I mean, it's just awful. Like, it's almost like, really, the more I think about it, the more I think is that a lot of these feminists, in many ways, were and are very delusional, because they think that that the men are oppressing women. They think that gender roles are a social construct. I really don't know where they seem to get their ideas from, but in many ways their ideas are actually very misogynistic as well. Because, for example, when you think of how a woman's primary biological function is to bear children, to now say that a mother is a birthing person or whatever, that is very, very anti-women. And you know, I understand as well, like, you know, not all women want to get married and not all women want to have children. I think that's fine. The problem is that that should be an individual choice. If somebody chooses not to get married or not to have children, that doesn't have anything to do with feminism. That's just, I'm just living my life. You know, like, career women, you know, Margaret Thatcher was like the most powerful woman in the United Kingdom, a proud career woman, and she hated feminism. You know, she wasn't a feminist, and she was like, she was the most successful woman in the United Kingdom, and she wasn't a feminist. I mean, it's just awful. So
and I think there's been quite a powerful history. I think you might have done a video on influential women who were not feminists. Is that right?
Yes, I did. I mentioned Thatcher.
There's just so many, like Thatcher's, I mean, I don't know if she's the best.
No, I don't know. No, I don't agree with her politics either at all, but she, you know, regardless of her, like, you know, I mean, of course, I think absolutely. She fucked up the UK, but...
Let's go one higher than Thatcher, Queen Elizabeth. Like, and, you know, I'm no monarchist, but, she was an incredible woman. Like, talk about, like, she was impressive as a human. Like, she wasn't just a good queen. If you compare her to kings, she was one of the best royals who ever lived. Like, her life was about and serving the people, and you know, there's probably some blemishes. She had endless dramas in her own family, and irresponsible. She had a lot of irresponsible men around her.
Have you seen The Crown?
Yes, interesting. And I wonder how much it gives a really. It did change my perspective on a few things, even though it's, you know, it's probably 80%. I don't know. It's hard to say how much is
dramatized.
Yeah.
But no, I completely agree. I mean, the Queen, for example, worked during the Second World War. Like, that is very impressive.
Yeah, like
she was a princess and she was out there working, you know.
Rubbing shoulders with Winston Churchill and like everyone, Nelson Mandela, like all the way through, man. Like, what, just such an impressive woman. So to say, like, how are we a patriarchy when the most powerful people, like have been women? And sure, there's less in power, but there's a lot more homeless men than there are homeless women. So where's our? I don't get it.
My dad works with the homeless, and he would agree with you. I mean, it's ridiculous, but I think this is the thing. It's like, because with feminism, I say the main, because there's so many people with feminism, but I suppose if we just look at the main two hugest problems, is that it undermines women and it also is extremely hostile towards men. And I think, you and I, as you said, like 2 years ago, you used to identify as a feminist. I think because it's so hard, and that's why I think the flip side of feminism, again, it's not my favorite book, but I don't know if I've mentioned, I'm actually writing my own book. Well, yet another, but I'm writing a non-fiction book this time, called The Rational Female, which I want to release around May. Yeah, I'm changing my channel name tonight as well, The Rational Female. And yeah, because in that book is going to be talking a lot about feminism. Like essentially it's going to be talking about how women can maximize our potential, and it's going to talk a lot about like dating and relationship sexuality as well. But the first like key chapter is going to be ditching the F word and really talking about feminism, because I think women just don't understand. Most people just don't understand feminism. Most people have no idea what feminism is. Most people think feminism is about equality, or they like, oh, it's about man hating, and it's not really either, because it's more than, it's not as simple as, oh, it's about hating men. Like, it's about hating the patriarchy, which is really just a complete, because as we were saying, before, like, patriarchy is really an anthropological term to describe a political system in which political positions are mainly held by men. But that doesn't mean that men are oppressing women. It just means that effectively men have more responsibility.
Yeah, and it's just a fact of our biological function as a species that women give birth. They are
people. People who birth.
It's so ludicrous that we have to say that, but that's giving birth. So women need to give birth to 2.5 children, thereabouts, 2.3 or whatever the number is, so that humanity can perpetuate. Like, that's just just dropped out. Hello, back. So giving birth to 2.3 kids on average, that takes 10 years out of a woman's life, which means, but if you want to be the prime minister, you have to dedicate an entire career, and then only if there are thousands and thousands of men and women applying, that it's going to go to extraordinarily successful people who have dedicated an entire career to that. And so that just means that less women will be in that running pool, because they have a different function in society, or not society as a species. Like, if we went back, if society crumbled and we were living in a post-apocalyptic world and there was no society, women still got to give birth, so it's not a social construct. It's a biological. You don't exist. Society exists on biology.
No, absolutely. And it's funny, actually, my boyfriend and I were having this discussion the other day about how, in a way, like, women are actually far more important in the human species than men. Because think about it, if you need, like, you only need one man to impregnate 10 women, because one man can just dish out lots of sperm. But you need more women. You need healthy, capable women who can give birth.
I hope this
You
doesn't
hope
get.
what?
Yeah, no, yeah, yes,
What are
I
you
agree.
saying? You hope that why it doesn't get cancelled?
Yeah, that little soundbite is going to get me in a whole lot of trouble.
I
No,
don't give
no,
a shit. But no, you
yeah,
know what? The thing is, I think we actually, on that as well, I think we need to start being, because I know for myself, because, I've been blogging since 2017. I've been writing about these stuff for a long time. And, because I've been watching it happen as well, because I am of this generation as well. I'm part of this, Gen Z, unfortunately, which was created all this madness. But I've realized in myself that I need to be more, I don't know if strong is the right word, but like just more durable and like actually just put my foot down. And I'm gonna be saying, like, in the video that I've already scheduled to go up tonight and tomorrow, like I'm really gonna show that. I want to show people that like we don't have to like take this shit anymore. Like we can actually stand up to it, because the feminists are like that. The feminists, like I remember saying this to my therapist once. I was like, oh my god, I want to start, a YouTube channel critiquing feminism. I'm scared. But then I was like, well, feminists aren't afraid to voice their opinions. And she was like, well, exactly. Because I remember once saying to her, like, oh, it'd be really awkward if I complained to my therapist about feminism. It's like, oh, you're a feminist. And she's like, no, I'm not. I mean, she's got
oh,
five kids. So, like, I think most
wow,
women, once they become wives and mothers, I think it changes something as well. Because I know, like, I've got one of my best friends, like, she used to be a feminist. I think she was even more militant than me, because I was never a militant feminist. I really had very similar, like, opinions to how I had now. I think I was just a bit more, I was liberal feminist or whatever. But my friend, I
sure,
remember asking her once, are you still a feminist? She was like, well, not really. I feel like it was just really militant. Because it's very militant. And, it does
yeah,
undervalue, like in many ways, it is a very misogynistic ideology, because it really undervalues women. It undervalues our potential. It
yes,
undervalues womanhood. It says that women are oppressed. I mean, like I'm reading The Feminine Mystique right now, because I have read about it, but I want to actually like properly read it. And it's like, I'm on chapter 3, and it's just this woman, she's just complaining and saying, oh, all women, occupation, housewife, all these women only want to be housewives. First of all, why are you upset about other women's choices? That's the thing which I really can't stand. It's like, why are you so keen to dictate what other women do with their lives? It's like, if a woman wants to be
yeah,
a housewife, why is that? You're like, fuck's sake, man, just let her be a housewife. And
yeah,
second of all, like, lots and lots. So, for example, oh yeah, there's as well, like, we were talking earlier about Janice Fiamengo, and like, I really
yeah,
think that, because we need to actually elevate non-feminist women who are speaking out against feminism, because they've really been pushed down. And there's a woman named
yeah.
Carolyn Groglia, so she published a book called Domestic Tranquility. Again, it's this very kind of Christian conservative thing, which is also, I'm not
Sorry, what
huge
was
of
her
it as
name?
well, because I don't.
And
Carolyn Groglia. So
ah,
yeah,
I've
so
seen
she published, she's interesting because she was a lawyer. So I came across her actually in Benker's book, and she was talking, so she was a lawyer, and so she wrote a book. I haven't read it because it's like ridiculously expensive. Probably it's another thing as well. It feels like these books are so difficult to get, but we
yeah,
gotta keep talking about them so people know they
yeah,
exist, so they know that you don't just have to read fucking feminist books. But so
yeah,
Groglia, she was talking about how she studied law at the same time as Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was a feminist. And
yeah,
Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I do respect her in some respects as well. But Carolyn Groglia said that she was encouraged, she was supported, and she actually left her legal career to become a housewife and a full-time wife and mother. And she was very happy. And she was essentially saying that feminism has really devalued the housewife. It's really
yeah,
told women that, like, I know when we were in school, for example, nowadays, I mean, it's probably even far worse now with all the, you don't even know what a fucking goal is anymore. But when I was in school, like, I mean, I'm lucky. My schools are very, very encouraging, very supportive in terms of academic achievements and careers, which is all really, really good. But no one
mm,
ever says, oh, if you're a female, it's okay to think about, someday you might want to have a family, someday you might want to get married, you might want to have children. And girls just aren't told this anymore. They're not told, well, certainly not in
yeah,
the UK anyway, they're not told that, like, at some point you're going to want to have children. And it's like, a lot of women get 20s and suddenly it's like, you're single. And like, I mean, it's just not fair.
yeah,
Actually, I think it's really sad, because most women are not like extraordinarily ruthlessly ambitious either. Like being extremely like ambitious and goal oriented is a very masculine thing. Like this is something Deborah So talks about a lot, because you know she says like she's more masculine oriented than feminine oriented, which I'm the same. I've always been extremely ambitious, extremely driven, you know, I want to publish books, make videos, do everything. And you know, that's fantastic, but like the majority of women, the average woman my age, like isn't necessarily saying this, but what she really wants is to be in a happy, you know, to have a, you know, a good steady job, but ideally to be a wife and mother. Like that is what most women actually desire. And most women also want to be in relationships with men. They don't want to be with some, oh, we have a friend joining us. We'll add him to the stream. Just to interrupt. Hello, Brandon. Welcome to the stream. Oh, it's fine. Lovely to have you.
The time difference.
Oh no. I did say UK time, but yeah, I know it's
wrong.
yeah. Well, but welcome to the stream anyway. Thank you for coming.
Sure. I know I'm coming in right in the middle here. My bad.
No, it's fine. Happy to have you. So we were just talking about, you know, about how much feminism has done damage to society and how it's anti-women and anti-men and anti-marriage and anti-everything. It just wants to take over the world.
Like I'm nervous to even like that because it's like I don't know the implications. That was a lot. It's anti-everything.
Oh, sorry. I think your camera's a bit fuzzy.
Okay.
I can barely hear you, Brandon.
I'm gonna.
Is that better?
There we go.
Yes.
Better?
There we go.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So, you two are not formally introduced. So, Brandon.
Not at all,
Brandon. I said Brandon.
We've got a portmanteau already.
Well, I know it's nice to meet you.
Yes. So yeah. So no, please, you know, do join in. So yeah. So Adam has a really good channel where he interviews people. He interviewed me. Oh, Brandon, have you frozen again?
I'm not having you. I can behave well. I'm hearing everything you're saying. Are you guys able to hear me?
I can just now, but it's
just now. Yes.
All right. I'm not having any issue. You're both moving without any glitches. I'm hearing everything you're saying. So I don't know. I don't know what that means about the problem.
It's fine now. Yeah. If there's a problem, we'll just like address it. Yeah. Okay. No worries.
This is
yeah.
My
so I was saying
live stream. So I don't know.
No, doing great. We're very happy to have you. So yeah, your first throughway. Excellent. It's first time for everything. So so Adam, he interviews. So he's, you know what? Let me stop talking. Adam, why don't you tell Brandon about yourself and tell the viewers?
Sure.
Hi, I'm Adam. Yeah, I've got a channel called Consider This. I'm focusing mainly on human rights for men issues. I'm reluctant to use the MRA tag. I don't like that label per se, but I've worked in Australia here with people with a disability, mental health issues, and criminal behaviour, like that intersection. I used to run my own organisation for 10 years or so, so I saw a lot of injustice towards men, and you just cannot speak about that whatsoever. So nearly all of our services, our welfare, is directly or primarily or exclusively available for women. And so that chapter of my life wrapped up a few years ago. And so now, I've just thought a way to sort of bring this to the light is to interview mostly men who have gone through extraordinary cases. The second episode was I interviewed a lady whose son was murdered by a woman, and just she wasn't charged with his murder. And there's been so the independent investigators have gone in, former police detectives, and they found that overwhelming evidence that her son was murdered by his female partner, and there were no consequences. So yeah, but I'm also interested in the theory of this and women who are interested in egalitarian, like honest egalitarian um, ideas, which is what brought me to Zarina, which is, yeah, I think her work's fantastic. So, um, and yeah, it's just great seeing women working towards genuine human rights for men and human rights for women, like equally. So that's what I'm really interested in, and that's me.
No, that's fantastic. No, and it's really important as well, because I was actually like saying earlier how I'd long term love to set up some kind of domestic violence abuse shelter in London for men and boys, because I just feel like that just isn't given enough weight to it. I feel like, we need to have some sort of, like, if we want to build a world which is an actual egalitarian world, then we actually need to support men just as much as we support women. And right now, the fucking men women is like gender equality for women and girls. And I'm sorry, but you can't have gender equality if you're leaving out 50% of the population. Like, that isn't gender equality. And, I think that one could be a women's advocate, which I define myself as, not a feminist, a women's advocate, while also being a men's advocate. The two are actually, meant to be complementary. And, we need men's advocacy, we need women's advocacy. Like, FGM is a thing which I feel really strongly about, and pisses me off how the fucking Western feminists just aren't, at a wider scale, aren't doing enough to come up with a viable solution to it. But, I really do think that it's important to advocate for men's rights as well. But Brandon, yeah, your visuals all nice and clear now. So do you want to give us a little introduction to yourself?
Sure. So no, I took the resolution down from 720 to 480. I thought that might help.
Yeah.
Look, my credentials are nowhere near as relevant. I think I'm an arts and humanities guy, right? I mean, I studied.
Oh, but that's fantastic. I mean, well, Adam's a musician. I'm an author and musician.
Right.
So
Right. I mean, I studied live performance, theater arts, but I mean, when I was in college, I spent so many years in college not actually achieving anything. I kept switching majors from psychology to philosophy, and I went through 4 majors before I finally landed on theater. But that's my background. All the work that I've done post university has been, if it wasn't 9 to 5s to get by, it was all one-on-one personal reactions to, or personal interactions to improve coach people through performance anxiety, help them learn how to have more presence on stage, dealing with the emotional aspects of the characters from a psychological perspective, and how to bring that across. That's sort of my history. So when it comes to this arena that you guys, I said this arena, not Zarina, just I realized that sounded like that in my head.
Rhymes.
When it comes to this arena, I'm really just somebody who has had their eyes open for a long time, and who has grown up in the South in the United States. And I don't know how much you guys know about that, but I've grown up under a particular paradigm, and it's been very restrictive and very traumatic at times, especially as a child. And I noticed it's when it comes, if you're talking about it from this angle, I do notice that there is not really a space where it's okay to talk about that, where it's okay to allow yourself to be that. And then even the people or the situations, like the scenarios that are set up supposedly to help or give men a community, give men someplace to go in those spaces, it's simply reinforced. Well, no, that's not how men handle it. We're stoic. We don't come here and get upset and talk about how things have hurt us. We come here to bond and to like kill things and drink beer. And there's no real help there. They're still living in the same. Even those groups in my area, in my region, the groups that are meant to be there to help give men some sense of community, or they are still reinforcing the same very toxic ideas that we're fed from childhood. So if that's what this conversation is, yeah, that's where my sort of position on that sort of got formed, was in that atmosphere. Definitely seeing that. I mean, I've looked up statistics that I can't hardly remember now from just the numbers, just the tens of thousands of battered women's shelters and homeless shelters for women who are in abusive relationships. And I think in the United States, back in 2017 is when I looked up, and I think that there were maybe 4 in the entirety of the United States that would allow men. It was, now
That's
don't quote that
terrible.
number to me, but it was very small. And
But
again, this was
I
years ago.
don't doubt it's about that number. Yeah.
It was getting better,
Probably
and
same in
it
England
is
as well.
continuing to get better. A lot of women's shelters began opening their doors to men and things, and that started happening a few years ago. So it's getting better, but it's just not the underlying causes. The root causes aren't really being addressed because, like you said, you're not allowed to talk about it as a guy because as soon as you
No.
as soon as you open your mouth about it, it becomes, well, you have all the power. You're the big strong one, right? Oh, she hit you. Oh, that's that. It becomes about that. Like, dude, I'm not a small guy, so yeah. If I came up and said that, my 5'4", 115-pound girlfriend hit me, I'm really upset. People would look at me like I'm stupid, or
That's
they'd start
terrible.
calling me names, and it's just part of the. That's just part of the culture that we live in. So yeah, I definitely see where you guys are.
Yeah. Are you doing okay, by the way, Brandon? Just like checking and everything. Have you had a decent day and all that?
Okay.
Yeah,
You
because I
said,
know
are you
it's a
doing
bit
okay?
stressful.
My
Yeah, it's
brain
just a
went,
bit. Just a bit stressful, I guess, jumping into like the middle of a stream. Just I like to check people are doing all right.
oh, I'm flying by the seat of my pants here. I love it. That's fine. I'm kind of just catching on to where you guys are and trying to hop into the stream, trying not to mess up the
Yeah.
water too much.
No,
No, I'm good.
that's
I've
fine.
got a
Yeah.
little bit of a nose condition, so I mute my mic and turn around. It's because I'm blowing my nose, or I need to, because I don't want to do that on camera. Just
No,
let
that's
you know.
fine.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm the same. But no, you're absolutely right. And it's interesting, actually, you were talking about power because we were talking about that earlier. And I really want to address this idea of power because feminists often say that men have all the power in society. But this idea of power is really I think their idea of power is a very one-dimensional view of power because it's like, first of all, what do they mean by power? Because it's like, they say, oh, men held all the primary political positions, but does that mean that men are necessarily in power or that men have more responsibility? And in many ways, in many societies, for example, like in, Asia and Latin American, African societies, the woman has a lot of power, the grandmother, for example. My boyfriend told me this actually, like how in Mexico, the grandmother and the mother is really, really revered. The grandmother is the head of the family. So when we're talking about power, like, what do you guys think about that? This whole idea of, male power, and it's really one dimensional, I think.
I don't know. Let you take that one first.
Yeah.
Is something wrong with my camera?
Yeah, it's just zoomed in a bit.
My bad.
It's
Go
okay.
ahead, Adam. I'm listening. I swear.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's absolutely ludicrous. Like, power, like, what does that mean? And who are the beneficiaries? So, who, like, we touched on this before, Serena, with, I think a lot of, like, throughout antiquity and throughout evolution, like, everything was about survival. It wasn't about benefits or privileges. They were extraordinarily rare. And so I think we developed a society to protect women so that they were relatively safer than men, so that they could give birth to children and raise a family so that humanity didn't die out. And so I think we started chivalry. And so the idea of, knights protecting society and women, and now we've got chivalry and feminism that are still the dominant influential beliefs and systems. And it's centered. So the welfare system, like, so we, all three of us, welfare states are the all modern democracies have significant welfare, and we pay large amounts of tax, and the vast majority of tax and welfare goes to help exclusively or primarily women. And I think that so we've all got male leaders, but they're running systems where the system benefits women. and I think women should, people who give birth should receive the majority of, like, that. Someone, the pregnant woman is the most vulnerable person in society, and so she does need to be supported. So that part of it is still currently true, and that should sustain. But men are human too, and so we should be protected under laws. And in Australia, like, so that's a theme in my podcast, showing where men who have been murdered or attempted murder don't receive any justice. So we're actually, this is something, I had this question, I'm not sure if we've spoken about this before, Zarina, but the sentencing disparity, sex sentencing disparity. Have we discussed that?
Probably, but I think I mentioned in one of my videos as well how, like, men receive longer and harsher prison sentences, and this does seem to be a very universal thing. I wouldn't be surprised if it's like that in pretty much every country. I mean, we've only really looked at the West, like, Britain,
in the
Australia,
US,
America. I mean,
definitely.
the three countries we're all have pretty similar kind of social, political, economic models of some cultural differences, but very similar. And the feminist movement is very predominant in all three of our countries. So it's all kind of governed around this very, like, I completely agree, this whole thing of how the system is really supposed to be, well, that's another thing as well, the system's supposed to be set up to protect and support mothers. And in the past, women were much more appreciative of men. Chivalry in a lot of ways is a very good thing. Of course, there's the extreme, I think really the extremes are not a good thing in any way at all, because chivalry in terms of a man being supporting his wife or girlfriend, being caring, like, I think most women appreciate that, but you've got to give something back. It's like, if there's a man and a woman in a relationship, the woman as well, like, you cannot just expect the man to do everything for you. It has to be like that's the whole point of a partnership. It's like you work together, like, and this idea of complementarianism, of a man and a woman being complementary partners, because that's something my boyfriend and I love to talk about, how we complement each other, how we're complements to one another. And that's how it's supposed to be. It's like, in the relationship, he's the man, I'm the woman. So confusion. And we have, like, we're very, both love, we love to discuss about things. We're both very, like, intellectual and stuff, but it's like, we complement each other. And, like, I feel like women used to appreciate masculinity more, and they used to appreciate positive masculinity, because we keep hearing about toxic masculinity. And there are toxic masculine traits, but there are also toxic feminine traits, which feminism is literally, feminism is basically toxic femininity on steroids. But we need to hear more about the good things that men do in society, like that men fight and die in wars, that men literally sacrifice. I mean, you guys, know the Titanic. Titanic's one of my favorite movies. And what was their whole thing? Women and children first. Yeah. And I remember watching A Night to Remember with my friend, which was like a precursor to Titanic. It was made in like the 50s, and it was more like almost like more of a docudrama. And there was this one scene where you have this man who literally looks at his wife and children, and he's just like, so he goes and speaks to the guy, and he's telling him the ship's going to sink. So he's like to his wife and children, "You get on the boat, please." And she's like, "Honey, what's going on? I'm not going without you." And he's just like, "Darling, I never would have expected you to obey me, but in this case, please, you must obey me." It's like a joke, but it's like, because he wants to save his wife and children. And you just see, like, she just gets into the boat with the kids, and she's sitting there waving while the boat's down, and he's just waving. And just imagine how you would have had all of those women and children going into the boat, and the men are just waving, and it's like, yep. Because at the end of the day, he's the one who's gonna die, to save his wife and kids. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I have just as many problems as you seem to with the term toxic masculinity, but the thing is, even the traits themselves, there's nothing inherently toxic about aggression, and there's nothing inherently these aren't inherently toxic traits. What we need to be talking about, I don't understand when it stopped being toxic masculinity, or when it stopped being just toxic behavior, period.
Yeah.
When it
No,
became
agree.
toxic masculinity. The problem is when we moved, in my opinion anyway, when we moved into that terminology, words are so important, and that's getting diluted all over the place right now. People are just expanding definitions, narrowing definitions, and completely throwing things out like words don't matter. But words are really important. And whenever you talk about, when you take it from toxic behavior and you make it toxic masculinity, you've now vilified the masculine in a way that is inherent, making it so, making the presumption that men inherently have toxic in them, like what's born in us, like we are somehow infected by it from birth, like it's in our DNA. And that to me is when you have a problem. That's when it becomes an issue.
No, very well said.
And we can see, like, you know, someone like Andrew Tate goes too far. And says,
I think all three of us have similar views on Andrew Tate. I mean, talked about it with both.
Yeah. He, like,
he's
and so
right now.
He probably does fit the toxic masculine kind of bubble. But my issue with it is
he's just a narcissist.
He's just a bad. He's just a bad person. Like I don't. He's just a bad person. He's just a person with very selfish and narcissistic perspectives. Yeah.
And so So then and we see something like you could compare into Amber Heard, right? Like something like that.
Oh God.
So a similar sort of and so that's they're genderless. But Andrew Tate has the hyper masculine characteristics.
Sure. That's a really interesting point. Amber Heard would be a good example if you wanted to make her the other side of the Andrew Tate coin. Then what you could do is you could really look at and sort of elucidate how you have the same toxic behavior coming from very feminine traits. Because she is a very feminine person in a lot of ways, and she uses the same way that Andrew Tate uses his bravado and his big muscles and his cigars and all of that nonsense to sort of promote his masculine image. I lost her name. What is her name? Heard. Andrew. Oh my God, Amber Heard. Right. God Almighty. Amber Heard uses her charm, her vulnerability, her perceived helplessness. She uses those same things to achieve the same goals and to commit the same behavior. Again, I really think it comes back to that. I mean, just talking about what you were talking about, the thing that you mentioned a while ago too. It just seems apparent to me. We just need to change the dynamic of how we approach and view these things. Did you know that there was a study, there was a statistic thrown at me once that the reason that you'll find some organizations like to recruit and women for clandestine operations and things that involve spying or violence is because on average, they've done a study apparently, and on average it takes anybody, men or women, in a situation 7 to 14 seconds longer to recognize a woman as a threat, even if she reveals a weapon. It's like it doesn't click. That's why
the women are wonderful effects. That's called the women are wonderful effects.
So that's just a perception that we have.
It is. We have a perception of women as being inherently good and virtuous, and I think that a lot of that comes from Christianity. But have you guys heard of the manipulated man? Because I was talking earlier as well about books which critique feminism, and because there's some really good ones out there, and The Manipulated Man by Esther Villa, I haven't read it yet, but she talks about this, about how, there's this very toxic feminine manipulation that women use, especially narcissistic women. And I do think as well, like there are some traits which are they're more toxically feminine and more toxically masculine traits, and not because masculinity and femininity is a spectrum. It's just that men are usually more masculine, women are usually more feminine, but masculine and feminine energy is something we all have, and there are some toxic traits which are more feminine, which I do think like Heard does use that very feminine, the playing the damsel in distress, playing the victim, crying, oh no, poor me, like that's a very toxic feminine thing, whereas Tate uses the very toxic masculine, however he talks, top G.
Yeah.
But I can't stand him. I don't understand why men like him. But I actually wrote something on my community tab. Actually, he's like he's kind of like, to me, like the male equivalent of feminism.
It's why men voted for Donald Trump.
Trump.
Yeah,
But
like
Trump is,
Okay.
I thought Tate was worse
Y'all
than
are
Trump.
trying to get
Trump
me
is
shot. Y'all know
just
I'm in the
funny.
United
I mean,
States, right?
he's. I mean, you know, and I actually I'm not completely anti-Trump or whatever, but there
yeah,
was that.
Trump's not
I am.
100% bad.
He's just a great, like he's a great character, and he wasn't respectful towards women. So so Jordan Peterson actually explained it in a way that made sense to me, that when men are suppressed generally in public, then they will vote for a hypermasculine external figure to represent them. Yeah, yeah, and so it's a it's a destructive hit back at feminism, which is it's not a good thing.
Everybody likes
Like
to feel like
Makes
they have
sense,
power.
though.
And
It makes
we're
sense.
made to feel
Makes a lot
weak
of
from
sense.
every angle, and you have somebody that says, "No, you're this, you're that, look. This is who we're supposed to be. This is how we control things. We
yeah,
take. Yeah, it can be
where it's actually
inspiring.
conversations like this and direct and addressing it in a principled way is the way to genuinely do it as individuals. And then we don't need to vote in a Margaret Thatcher or a Donald Trump. We can have people we can vote for people who are
more, not so extremely polarizing. Yeah.
Yeah.
As someone who was here and watched this election firsthand, got to be, I don't think the election of Donald Trump was that nuanced. I really, honestly, I've been watching it so close now. I don't like to think about the 55 years it feels like. So it's been a long time, and there's been nonstop coverage. And I got to be honest, when it all comes down to it, I believe the only reason that he actually succeeded was because of the really not hidden at all agendas in the right side of our politics here to do things like what they've done, which was reversing Roe v. Wade. I think that was the number one priority. But the reason for that is, again, it's not necessarily about Roe v. Wade, but that was the reason that was the motivation behind getting him to that's their starting point. And with that, you had a bunch of fundamentalist, very, very devout Christians ignoring things like grabbing by the butt and all of the times he got caught stealing from people, or all the times he paid off someone because they were alleging sexual assault, and they completely ignored all of these character flaws and labeled him as a good, godly man because he would stand up for pro-life perspective for the pro-life propositions. And that's if he didn't have the evangelical vote, if that hadn't been there, that he wouldn't have gotten close. And so to me, that's the biggest factor to get him elected.
And that was kind of his strategy with having Mike Pence by his side, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. 100%. 100%. And yeah, again, like you said, he is a great character. He's morally ambiguous to an extreme cartoonish level. All he cares about is advantage and personal, advancement. And that's what he's looking for. He has no stance on any of these issues from a moral perspective. It's all about what to say to keep the crowd. And that was the thing. And the Republicans, I mean, he mentioned, I think he had an interview back in the early 90s where he said if he ever ran, he would run as a Republican because they're stupid
enough to get,
Like he said,
he was actually initially a Democrat. Like he's not even that right leaning. He's more libertarian.
He's certainly not a right wing character. He never no. And
he's not really a politician. He's a businessman.
If you're saying here, let's elect this man to the highest office, and someone shows you footage of him saying that your entire group of people are complete idiots, why would you vote for him? Except, hey, he'll vote against abortion rights. So, yay.
Yeah. It's interesting you bring up the whole abortion thing, because I think as well, this is probably more prevalent in America than in England and Australia, but the whole Christian fundamentalism thing, because feminism in many ways, especially maybe because I think as well, people this is a very conflation as well. People tend to associate feminism with sexual revolution, whereas the sexual revolution was more to do with the whole hippie culture, a lot of like, this is the biggest problem I had when I was reading The Flip Side of Feminism by Suzanne Venker. She talks about how feminism is all about encouraging women to be promiscuous, but a lot of the feminists like Andrea Dworkin and Catherine McKinnon and Julie Bindel and Kate Millett, like, they were not in favor, they were actually against heterosexual sex. Many of the feminists, especially of the 70s, were advocating for political lesbianism. I think more of the kind of hip, girl power feminists were like, yeah, sex and all that, but that wasn't really, again, that was not so much feminism as it is just, more this whole, I don't know, this whole idea of sexual liberation. I feel like it's its own thing as well. People have different views on it. I have certain views on it as well, but speaking specifically about the whole thing with Christianity, this whole idea of women wanting to rebel against a kind of virtuous Christian good woman. A good woman must be virtuous. A good woman must be docile and domesticated. And I think that really feminism was really a big, well, not just feminism, but neo-Marxism in general. A lot of it was really an attack on like Christianity. And I do kind of agree, but the problem is that they went from one extreme to the other. And that's where we have this kind of extreme right wing, more so in America, this kind of extreme puritanical. Because I was actually talking about this with my nephew. I was asking my nephew why it is that the American conservatives are so puritanically Christian, and it's because the Puritans went to America because they were too extreme for the Europeans. So that's where they're like descendants of them. And it's like you have this puritanical Christianity, because Christianity in England is like Christians in England are pretty chill. Like most Christians in England are like, yeah, they're more like, go to church. I mean, it's not even that deep. But in America, it seems Christianity in America is like
it's
a next level, man.
It's an interesting question, because if you look at what we were told anyway about the people coming over to the colonies back then and the motivations for that, you have, we're escaping religious persecution, right? But then also we're looking for religious freedom. We're looking for freedom to live life regardless of. It's the same argument that we have today. I don't know if this is where you guys meant to take this conversation, but what you're talking about happens today, where you will have people who are fundamentalist Christian going on camera, talking about, screaming about it in parking lots at cashiers, about how they're being persecuted because of their Christian values, and nobody should be able to tell them that they can't do this or can't do that. Whenever they told the school institutions that they could no longer impose prayer on their student bodies, they're attacking Christian rights. It's our right to be able to express our religion. But if somebody tried to lay down a cloth and kneel to the east at a certain time every day in school, they would throw a fit, and it would be the worst thing in the world. And they're coming to take over our schools, and they're trying to manipulate our kids. So it's the fact that the religious freedom has always existed as an argument, but usually and almost exclusively only for the side arguing for it. Generally, the person screaming about religious freedom is a Christian wanting you to do everything their way.
Very ironic, isn't it? But you could say the same actually about feminism. Like, they say they want women to have choices and they want women to have rights, yet they don't allow women to not be feminists. They're like, oh no, if you want to be, a housewife, if you want to be an anti-feminist, if you want to be, like one of the biggest problems. So I was kind of mentioning this earlier with the whole sexual revolution thing, because one of the biggest problems I have with feminism is that feminism, this is why also I don't really think feminism supports female sexual liberty, because most feminists are actually very against prostitution, because they're like, oh, prostitution is demonizing women. Like, I've read this really, really fucking irritating book. Well, I shouldn't say that actually. It's just a good book. It's just, I don't agree with most of it, but it's well written, well reasoned for what she's saying. It's by this kind of radical feminist conservative. It's a really weird combination, like radical feminism and Christian conservatism in one book. It's really, it's by well, it's not common in England as far as I'm aware, but it's by this woman named Louise Perry, and it's called The Case Against the Sexual Revolution. I have a long video going up on February the 1st where I really, really dive into it, because my God, like, I mean, the book is so, and it's one of the problems I have with feminism, how they claim to be about women's freedom, but then they say, and they support abortion, and they're like, oh, a woman should have a right to an abortion, and abortion should be, about freedom of choice. And I really, as well, on abortion, I really think abortion, especially in America, has really got nothing to do with feminism. It's mainly really the Christians versus the secularists, because most people who say, where's my sound gone?
No, we got you.
Yeah, we can hear you, I think.
Oh no, I think it was on my end. Yeah, no, most people who say abortion should be banned completely are like extreme Christian fundamentalists. Like usually, I'd say most people when it comes to abortion don't think it should be a good thing, don't think it should be celebrated, but we're not trying to say, we understand it's just a last resort, if
It's
all else backup fails.
it's the
Yeah, but
pro-life, pro-choice dichotomy, which I think is an absolutely
Yeah.
ludicrous
It
to
is a
have that.
ludicrous dichotomy, yeah.
Yeah,
It's really
yeah,
bad
where
wording. So what Brandon was saying earlier about words. But anyway, so what I was essentially saying is that like most feminists they say that women should have choice, but then they say if a woman wants to be a sex worker, oh, but that's sexist. Or if a woman wants to be like a stripper,
patriarchy.
oh, that's patriarchy. It's like what the it's like it's just so confusing. It's like you want to have
It's
people to have freedom, but it has to be on your terms kind of thing as well. It's the same thing with the Christian fundamentalists. They're like, oh, freedom of religion, but it has to be our way, and it's like it doesn't make sense.
yeah. There's no, and that's going back to what you were saying, Brandon, about the toxic masculinity, and all of these issues. Is there's no objective definitions. So
No.
I'll get feminists hating on me for saying women should be prosecuted the same as adult men, which is a statement of equality. Like, so I believe in equality.
Yeah.
So I think if a man and a woman commit a crime, they should receive the same consequences. So I'll make that statement, but then I will be labelled a misogynist and I'm toxically masculine, and they'll smash the patriarchy, which is Adam, because I'm making a statement which they feel is subjectively misogynist. But there's no objective definition of that. So where's the objective definitions? Like if we're going to label someone toxic masculine, what does that mean? How is that charge stamped? What criteria does it need to be patriarch? Or what's the definition of patriarch? You can't. It doesn't exist.
I mean, talking about word that's where I honestly those are the hills that I would die on when we start talking about words and definitions and how we use our language, because I think that very few things have objective reality. Very few things. Most things are pluralist, and when it comes to words, if you're speaking the same language, at least words have a meaning. They have there's a reason. There's a very definitive answer. So if you say something to me, then I mean, if you say yellow, I know exactly what you're talking about, right? If you say something's heavy, if you picked it up and it was too heavy, I know exactly what you're talking about. There's no objectivity in that. Now you could talk. Somebody who was just making an argument could say, well, how heavy, but that's not what I mean. But whenever you're talking about the thing to me is whenever you say that, the thing is if you coin something and it's real, like toxic masculinity, it needs an opposite. Everything has an opposite.
Sure.
There's always another side of the coin. So if you're going to create a word, if you're going to create a label and place it, there has to be another side of that coin somewhere. So we don't have that. That doesn't exist. Therefore, I mean, look, that may be simplistic, but right off the bat, I question the validity of your label. Whenever you can give that to me and you don't know nobody even really knows what the criteria is. It's toxic because it made me uncomfortable. That's
subjective.
But that's not a good definition of anything. You can't just label, especially when you start labeling an entire group with something that you don't even have a good definition for. So yeah, we agree about that. I think
it comes from social constructionism, because social constructionism says that reality is subjective, that there's no objective reality, and there is one side to it, which is, yes, you can say everything is subjective, but the point is that have a function in bloody society. And the function of language is that we all agree on what this word means. As you said, yellow means something.
Yeah.
That's the whole bloody point of
that's the reason.
Having language. For example, if people can't agree on a definition of something, I personally think a good solution to that is to look at example. So for example, going back to feminism, a lot of people say the definition of feminism is that it's about equality, but we know that's not the case for many reasons, one of them being that they don't give a fuck about men's issues. So the best example and definition that I give of feminism is that it's a social and political ideology, or social and political movement that claims that women are an oppressed class by a patriarchy, and seeks to dismantle gender roles, as it sees the dismantling of gender roles as ending patriarchy. You know, it claims that gender roles are a social construct rather than a biological function. And as well, gender roles as well is a really strange phrase, because gender roles are not inherently bad. Gender role just means your role in a biological function, i.e. the gender role of a woman is to produce kids, the role of a man is to provide sperm. Like, that's just a basic fact. Like, that's really all gender roles mean in a simple way.
Yeah. I think for me, it goes back to something that you said earlier, which is that it's all about extremes. Because you can have that conversation with me any day of the week about gender roles in our society and say, okay, well, we need to curtail this. We need to get what the conversation we need to be or destroying the placed on people who step outside of what we consider traditional roles. So if a man wants to be a nanny, we don't automatically assume he's a pedophile. Like we need to there was, and it's not anymore because we've really swung. Has really been working hard the past decade or so, but there was a time where if a woman wanted to be a construction worker or she wanted to be a fighter, there were certain assumptions made about her orientation. That those kinds of assumptions and stigmas are what we need to be attacking. The simple idea that there are roles is not even necessarily a negative thing, because in a society you have things that need to get done, and you have people. You need to have people to do them, and you find. Everything gets generalized. The larger something gets, the more general things become. So when you have millions and millions and tens of millions and hundreds of millions of people, you're going to have, okay, these are of our society. They're these things generally.
Sorry to interrupt, Brandon. I think your sound is cutting out a little bit again in your camera.
Yeah.
That's so it's on mine anyway.
I agree. We talked about equality of opportunity in our chat previously, Zarina, and so it's. The answer is not artificially creating equal gender outcomes. So 50% female politicians and 50% female bricklayers.
That's not realistic.
It's just removing barriers from unnecessary stigmas, so that if a man wants to be a male nurse, he can be a male nurse. Or if a woman wants to be a bricklayer, that if the opportunity is there, if she wants to do that.
Yeah.
So it's equality of opportunity, but we're different, so it's probably not going to happen equally. Like,
no, exactly.
Just to finish my thought, if my mic's working, because I don't want to come off sounding too harsh one way or the other. What I'm saying is those are the generalizations, but then inside of those groups, you have to allow the freedom for the individuals to make individual choices about who they are, what kind of work they want to be doing, what kind of personality. You need to allow them to live in their personality without feeling restricted. Just because someone was born female or is a woman and presents as a woman, identifies as a woman, there should not be restriction on what she can do with her life professionally or what role she needs to take in the home. But you can't deny that the generalities do help society. Like the generalizations do help society. We just need to get rid of the stigmas that are like making the generalities ironclad. They're making them prison cells that you can't get out of. So that does exist, and it does need to be dealt with. It just needs to be dealt with in a measured way, without
diplomatic way. Yeah, I also don't think it's as big as a problem as people make it out to be as well. Because I don't know about where you guys are, but I feel like in the UK anyway, like we do have equality of opportunity. I don't think the UK is like discourages people from doing what they want. I don't think. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm a bit biased because I work from home. I don't. I've kind of just do my own thing and get on with it. But I don't know. I mean, I don't really. I've never felt like there's any kind. I mean,
I worked in a female-dominated industry for most of my life, and I had mostly female managers, and some of them were fantastic. I learned a lot from it. But everything that women say that they experience that is negative working in a male-dominated field, I have experienced. Like female managers groping me and like so sexual harassment, all the weird shit. Like I experienced all of it, and you can't.
Wow.
As a man, you can't do
Can't say
anything about it.
anything.
anything.
It's so
You
bad.
can't.
Because we talked
See,
Yeah,
about
you
this.
I
can't.
would
Me and
never
Zarina talked
expected
about
that,
this. Yeah,
but it's yeah.
all right. Me and Zarina talked about this sort of uh, so there was a study done where they talked to men who were in dominantly female fields like teachers, nurses, that kind of thing, and they talked about the isolation. They talked about feeling ostracized or
Mm.
being looked at suspiciously, and particularly if they were working with
Oh yeah.
children. That was a
Yep.
very common thing.
Yes.
Particularly,
Overtly.
yeah, yeah. And there's that old joke about the guy who finds a little girl crying alone on an elevator. What does he do? What that's a scary situation for a guy. I have to admit it.
Yeah.
That I'm not comfortable. I'm not comfortable with there's a suddenly a 9-year-old girl in an elevator crying. I'm not getting on the elevator. That's crazy. I'm going to try to hold the door from far away and say, "Young girl, come on, come out. It's okay," and keep a distance. This is just things that you live with, and it's really important.
Yeah.
As a guy, no, not you're right. It are the same things. I don't want to too shy away from the fact that women deal with those things in male-dominated
Yes.
fields, and there are
Yes.
far more male-dominated fields than there are female-dominated fields. So that's the thing that certainly is real, but it does exist on both ends. It's a very real thing.
Wow.
The idea of a guy, a lot of guys who would love to be teachers who just won't teach. They make sure if they do want to be a teacher, they stick to middle school or above, generally high school or above. And there's a lot of that would rather go to teach college because why would you don't want to put yourself in a position like you're not going to be safe.
This is really important you guys talk about this because, like, as a woman, I've never ever felt like I've been held back in life as just by virtue of being a woman. Like, I've had a lot of, difficulties, mental health difficulties and stuff, but I've never felt like I've been suppressed as a female. And, hearing you guys talk about that, it is quite, I almost feel like you've actually faced more hardships just by being men, because I feel like my experience as a woman has been extremely positive. I've always been very supported. If I have a panic attack, someone will always come to my aid because I have panic disorder, I have anxiety. If I, most guys in my experience, tend to pay on dates. Like when I was single, if I go out to a club or whatever, a guy would get me a drink. Guy would, it's always like, I don't know. I kind of feel like UK society, my experience of being a woman is that people are very nice to you and polite to you. And not to sound really arrogant, I suppose, when you look a certain way, it helps as well if you're a female. I mean, women, especially young, attractive women, are probably treated better by most people than maybe like men.
Sure.
I know, like, my brother has told me, oh, it is.
Yeah,
like, my brother has told me, like, about how, for example, the amount of times he's gone to a club and how bouncers have been just so awful to him and, things he's gone through. And for me, it's like my experience of being I'm just talking about just as a female, forget anything else, any other part of my identity. Just my experiences as identity as a woman is very, very positive. And obviously there are hardships as well that women go through, but I think those hardships are more female on female hardships, like, for example, female on female aggression, female on female bullying. I was bullied all throughout my childhood by girls. A lot of women I know have difficulties with their mothers. I think that's a common thing as well. I think that, female on female is a very difficult thing, but
I don't want to downplay anything. We have a very a very unidirectional conversation, I think, kind of happening right now. So I think it's fair to at least mention that it does need to be acknowledged outside of this conversation. Like I have a daughter. I've taught my daughter from the time she was like 12. She's learned about things that you shouldn't have to teach a young person. Period. But we teach our daughters very young about how to watch their drinks when they're in public, not just at bars.
That's good.
Public, anywhere. We teach them how to, whenever you're walking to some place, if you're going from your car from a building to your car, we teach them how to hold their keys in a certain way. We teach them how to, there are certain things we teach people to watch for around their car that suggest that they're going to be targeted, they have been targeted. We teach them how to handle a lot of things. We have conversations about personal boundaries at a much younger age than I think should be necessary, because young girls are targeted. disproportionately, and
For sexual
so
violence, I'd say. For sexual
well, I mean,
violence,
that yeah, that is,
because
and
for
it's a
domestic
huge
violence,
thing.
it's
So I
actually.
just wanted to throw that out there because I don't want us to come across as very
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Of
unidirectional.
course,
want
I
to make
agree.
sure.
No, I completely agree. And it's true. Yes, absolutely. I mean, violence, like sexual violence against women and girls, is definitely a problem. But I do want to emphasize as well, because I think the media can sometimes really, like, I think the media likes to blow these things out of proportion because, yes, like sexual violence against women and girls does happen, but it's like a very small minority of men who commit the majority of the crimes, because the majority of the sexual violence against women and girls is committed by a small minority of men. And that's why I don't really like the narrative when, like, again, Louise Perry talks about this in her book, and most feminists will say, like, oh, men are violent, but it's like 10% of men who commit like 90% of the fucking
Well,
crimes. You know what
and
I
I think
mean? So
that's there is another side of that coin, though. At least in the United States, again, I can't speak to other cultures and how people were raised as children, what we were taught. Right? I didn't grow up other places. All I know is that here, part of the problem that happened, like after the big Me Too movement happened, and there was this huge conversation going on around sexual autonomy. Some of the things that we learned is that growing up as teenagers, boys and girls both were taught things in a way that normalized what is actually sexual assault. In a lot of ways, we were not taught about coercion. We weren't taught about young girls were taught to. We were put in a position where, as generations, we were taught girls are going to say no, boys are going to want it, and that's period. And the girls don't want it, boys do want it. That's period. So in order to get it, you have to be persistent. You have to kind of ask. You have to make advances. You have to be. You have to make some kind of like. And so we weren't taught that. Hey, sometimes if someone isn't interested, you should just accept that they're not interested and move on. Nobody.
Oh yeah, women are taught to play hard to get and all this other fucking nonsense.
And not making excuses, but that does make things awfully confusing, especially if you're a 15,
It
17-year-old boy. It makes things really confusing.
Oh, yeah.
There's a whole Bill Burr special about or bit about no meaning no, and this whole he says his point is, he goes, no doesn't mean no. He says no.
Women are very, very ambiguous. It's true.
He says, but no, stop it. Don't, you're being so bad. That doesn't mean no. That's not a no. That's that's something else. So it does make it very confusing. And those are things that do need to be addressed, because there is such a thing as coercion. There is such a thing as a woman feeling like she needs to go along with it because she doesn't feel safe.
No, I have actually,
yeah.
They are, and I actually did experience that when I made a video actually talking about, like, I actually experienced sexual coercion. That guy I lost my virginity to, the only guy who's ever actually inflicted any kind of genuine abuse towards me, and that was coercive and it was wrong, and I was very naive and I was very young. I was only 18 and I did not know what I was doing. He did take advantage of me, and I think that was bad as well, because like I actually had to push him off me to get him to stop, and it was wrong. And I think that we do need to, like, because I agree as well, like, but most men are not like that. Like, that's my experience, is like, that's like 99% of men are not like that. So my experience,
most of us, in my experience, at least in conversation, because obviously I haven't been in the room to witness it personally, but in my experience, according to conversations I've had, most men are really careful.
Oh yeah,
because because you can't read a person's mind. The problem is
men are very bad at reading women.
and the problem is that people who have been in situations that they shouldn't have been in like that, they go back and talk to the guy, and, well, what are you talking about? Nothing happened. There are so many times the men literally actually don't know that they've done anything wrong, and that's the problem.
They don't, and it's stupid. And it's, oh my god, this is actually very important to bring up, because I'm going to be talking about this a lot. So I mentioned this earlier. I'm working on a book called The Rational Female, which I'm hoping to publish around May, and I'm also changing my channel name this evening to coincide with that, because I think that women, this is something me and my boyfriend have talked about a lot. He says, like, actually a lot of guys, like even previous guys have said this to me, men like women being straightforward. Like, I've never had a guy complain about a woman, me being too straightforward or too honest. Like, most men would love it if women could be more honest. And one of the things, like, with me and my boyfriend, like, one of the things which made it come together so well is there was no playing games. Like, we were both friends, and things just happened very organically, and it wasn't like either of us were trying to be. It's the same thing, like even with my ex-boyfriend as well, like my two kind of most serious relationships. Like in both cases, it was very, very honest and very straightforward, and that's actually like men prefer that. I've never ever had a guy like not be happy that I was not straightforward, and
Oh no,
I think it's because I'm inherently more
great.
masculine in many ways anyway. Like in some things, I'm much more masculine oriented in the sense I tend to be more direct, tend to be more blunt, tend to be more in your face about things. And I think that if women could learn to be more like direct, and it doesn't mean because of course, you know, like people are obviously gonna, you know, because women is, you know, subtlety is a common thing, but I don't think women have to completely change or whatever. But I do think that women need to learn that when dealing with men, but also when dealing with other women, because it's very frustrating as well when dealing, like for example, when two female friends are having a conversation and you know, you have one female friend who says something and the other female friend just suddenly becomes very passive aggressive, and it's like you're like, are you okay, what have I done wrong? The other female friend's like, oh, it's fine, and then she gets angry at you and you think it's fine, but it's like it's not fine. And it's like, why can't you just say what's wrong? It's like, why are you expecting somebody to just expect? It's like this people cannot just be straightforward. It's like, you know, if somebody has done something upsetting, and this is a very, very toxic feminine trait, I would say, this thing of like passive aggressiveness, you know, emotional manipulation, and just being angry. When it's like you expect her to just get it, and it's like, I'm not a mind reader, can you just tell me? And I know, you know, women are inherently more like emotionally intuitive and stuff with one another, but sometimes I feel like it's not. Actually, it can be used very badly, and it can be used against you a lot of the times. Like in my experiences with many women friends, you know, like I won't go into this too much, but like it is a very common problem, and I think it's a way in which how women use this against each other, and then they use it against men.
If I could, I think that maybe that could be more of a that sounds more like someone. Okay, this is going to sound strange, but that almost sounds more like a man, like that sounds more like a men thing. And this maybe it's just because it's from my experience, right? Okay, so the idea that, hey, I've done something, it's hurt your feelings, and now you're kind of being an ass for no reason. Can I say ass? I don't know if I could say.
Yeah.
Okay. So now you're being an ass for no reason, or you're being cold, or you're being distant. I don't know what's going on. Well, that's because I hurt your feelings. But you're a guy. You can't have hurt feelings. You've got to be. You don't get hurt by. So instead, you're just going to get pissed off. And I see him nodding. He knows. He's seen this. This is a thing that happens because dudes, right? I mean, I'm not wrong, right? I mean, guys, when we get our feelings hurt, we just get pissed off and like, well, you can't hurt my feelings. And then we get all kinds of different ways about it. There's a whole different, there's many different approaches they will take. Yeah. So
maybe this is just toxic human behavior then.
Just a behavior.
Maybe this is, because I'm saying this, and maybe it is actually, that is interesting.
Human behavior. Yeah. It's just people, again, and that seems like people, because of there is a vilification, or not really that, more like just there's just something that we've learned as humans, that certain things are weak, and those are feminine things generally, like being vulnerable, being emotional, being hurt is weak. And so we buck up against that. I'm not weak. I'm strong. I'm independent. I can handle myself. You don't have any power over me. So therefore, I'm not going to show you that you hurt my feelings. I'm just going to be a douchebag for you for like no reason. You know, I'm just going to be mean. So, you know. That's I
don't know, men. Interesting.
Yeah, I'm very like if something bothers me, I wasn't naturally like this. So I was taught, like growing up, I was in a very strict religious family, and I wasn't allowed to communicate these things. But then coming out of that, I had to like deconstruct a whole bunch of bullshit. And then when I reconstructed that, I became quite assertive. And then now I struggle with the exact opposite, where people find me too abrasive, and because I'm so direct. So I've lost job professional situations.
I think it's better to be direct though, because people respect you and they can't take advantage of you. And also I think most people respect honesty. Like there is something about being tactful, of course, like tact is very important, but no, it's just interesting though, like when you were saying earlier, Brandon, about how men can be like passive aggressive in that way with each other. And I do wonder if I do think that men and men and women there tends to be more conflict because, you know, it's like there's almost more like male on male conflict and with female on female conflict. It's a very different type of conflict compared to like female on male conflict.
Oh yeah,
Sense.
yeah,
It's a
for
much
sure,
more
for sure.
almost intense, you know, level of conflict. And
Well,
you know, the way
yeah,
like, you know,
I agree. I agree. That's definitely true. It's just a thing that happened. I went through a similar situation. I took some time and started breaking my behaviors down and started trying to find ways to communicate myself. The thing is, you're not serving yourself if you're not communicating your needs, right, or your
no, you're not.
boundaries. You're not going to be happy like ever. So, and I'm still working on it. I mean, I'm working very hard on the thing that you do where you kind of take time. I have very, very specifically, I've made the statement to someone. Okay, listen, I'm really pissed, but I'm just going to go in yonder for a little while, and then we're going to talk about it when I get back. Like I've told people, like I'm not happy, but I'm just going to take a minute, right?
That's
Uh,
it's very mature,
and
very healthy.
oh, it's hard. It's not easy, and it sucks. But it's necessary because I want to be able to have this conversation. It's important for me now to tell people this was a boundary of mine and you've crossed it. Maybe you didn't know it was there. Let's work it out. Like whatever that thing is. But the problem is that we tend to, yeah, that's a human thing, I think. It feels like that's something that we just don't like to be vulnerable. We're taught that vulnerability is weak and that it's, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
So I mean, I think that is something that you could coin as if you wanted to coin something, toxic femininity that presents in both men and women. And I could do the same. I mean, he was talking earlier about situations that Adam was talking about situations that he experienced at his job. And I've spoken to you. I know last time we talked about how if you there's a video out there where there are these 4 or 5 high school age girls or like college age, 20-year-old girls at this pool party around this poor like 15-year-old boy, and he's just like holding himself like this, terrified, holding onto his swim trunks because they're laughing and trying to pull him off of him over and over again, and he's just sitting there like almost in tears until his mom comes and saves him. That kind of behavior is toxic, but it is not, and it is masculine, but it is not restricted to men. It is just, but in that situation, it's about opportunity a lot of the times. If you have that in you to do, because most situations, women don't have that power. They're not bigger and stronger usually, so they don't have that power. But when you take 4 or 5,
but they have a different type of power. That's the thing as well. Because I was talking earlier about the idea of male power. Because I do think women and this is the thing with feminism, has really undermined feminine power. Because women have power, but our power maybe is much more subtle and more covert, and maybe that's also why a lot of women tend to commute.
Also systemic. So women have the power of the state. Which is
in a lot of situations here. Yeah.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
Particularly around familial issues.
Talks a lot about it using, and it's something that just, well, she's a leading academic, Brandon, for FYI, just brilliant. So she's one of the few gender-neutral academics addressing domestic violence and coercive control in a gender-neutral way, like non-feminist, non-idealistic, true academic scientific work. And she's being absolutely smashed by the feminist academic community for releasing this information. And so one of her big things that is kind of novel, academically novel, is systemic abuse that women use. So Amber Heard. So make a false allegation, and then the system will punish the alleged abuser on her behalf, which is something that only women have. So if a young man says, that adult woman raped me, like, no one's going to do anything. Like, what's going to?
Have you seen the South Park episode?
Yes, yeah.
Nice.
No, this is why I really want to set up some kind of domestic abuse shelter, but just for men and boys, because I think there's so many women's shelters, but I want to have a shelter just for men and boys. Like, I want to do that someday for sure, because I think it's really necessary. It's really important, and because it's true. Like, I never really, it's kind of a bit messed up, but I actually feel like we're so accustomed to living in a feminist-driven world that we never actually think about men's problems. Like, I remember once I was with a guy, and I remember like he was making a joke once ago. Yeah, because he was talking about how his neighbors would always come and disturb him or whatever, and he was saying, "Oh yeah, a man is always not disturb him, but they were always complaining to him about things and saying that he was doing this, and he was just making a joke like, oh yeah, a man is always guilty." And it's kind of true. It's like I once thought to myself, if a woman, if a man does something wrong, it's his fault, but if a woman does something wrong, it's somehow the man's fault. Like still,
That
like
does
if
happen. Yeah,
it's
too
really,
often.
and it's something we see on television. Like I used to see it a lot of the TV shows I watch as well. Like it's always, like there was this TV show I used to love, called H2O, Just Add Water, about these three girls who are mermaids. Really, really fun show. And I'm sorry to say this, but they really do kind of bully the male character, Lewis. Like, not all of them. And I think it's more in the second season. Like, the first season, not as much, but it's like,
Okay.
you think to yourself, what does that mean?
Pretty in Pink. I keep forgetting. I'm the only one in the U.S. Pretty in Pink. It's a huge. I'm sorry. That's a cultural reference. You have no idea. No way to know. It's just that the sort of smaller, weaker, placating best friend boy character of a teenage to young adult woman.
But it's like, it's a very common thing with, I saw it a lot on the TV shows I watched, because, when I was kind of growing up, there were all these kind of girl power TV shows, which is a good thing. And, but the problem, I think, is that when it's like, we're uplifting women, but making fun of men. Like, you guys know, for example, how a lot of the whole stock character of the stupid man, the stupid husband, like you have the very intelligent wife, like in Family Guy, American Dad. That kind of American Dad's actually pretty cool. Like they're actually
what was that show with Kevin James?
But I say Family Guy and The Simpsons. Probably King of the Hill. I haven't seen it, but yeah, this whole thing of like the smart wife and the stupid husband, and I don't know. It's all
fairly overweight, out of shape, and have dead jobs usually.
Yeah. It's all like, feels like it's all been created to kind of suppress men. And it's just like, even me thinking about this, because we're so used to living in a feminist world, it's actually conceiving of the fact that like men have problems too. Life is hard for men. Men are people. Men deserve empathy. Like, it's almost like people just don't care, actually. There's this book another really good book is called Is There Anything Good About Men by Roy something. It's also my gender egalitarian list. At some point as well, I'm going to do a video where it's going to be called like anti-feminist pro-equality books that you need to read. And it's really messed up because I think men, there does seem to be like this inherent bias of women are wonderful, men are bad, and it seems to all come from feminism, because the feminist movement has really created this idea of the man as the one who is always in the wrong, the man who is always evil, the man is always at fault. I mean, and I just think, oh, by the way, actually, have you guys seen the Red Pill documentary by Cassie J? Because she's another great. Yes. Yeah. So that's an excellent documentary. I remember watching that years ago, and like, it was about this young American woman who was a feminist, and she was like even more, I'd say, more of a radical feminist. And she spent like a year investigating the men's rights activism movement and was basically trying to show how sexist it was. And by the end, she realized that actually they were really like just trying to help men and gain rights for men, and actually the feminist one were the ones who were actually sexist. And she realized, and she ends it by saying, I no longer identify as a feminist. And it's a wonderful documentary because she really shows how, like, I mean, I don't, I kind of get the whole thing of not wanting to be an MRA because, this whole thing of men's rights activism. I prefer to say like I'm a men's advocate, because I think you can be a men's advocate and you can be a women's advocate. Because if you're a women's advocate, that just means you support women. If you're a men's advocate, that just means you support men. If you're an egalitarian, they're much more neutral terms. But, because feminism as well, we were talking earlier about words and stuff. Like, feminism is really a political term. And I think we need to actually see that feminism is fundamentally something that is political, and it's not social, it's not cultural, it's political.
Everything gets turned that way, doesn't it? It seems like if you have someone who tries to come up with a new term or a new way to describe themselves so that they stay more neutral, it eventually turns into something that's divisive. It always seems to run that direction, but it always gets co-opted. I'm interested to know your perspective, if you've done any research on it, actually, because you say you've been researching feminism for a while. I haven't been.
Long time,
but I do know, or I have heard some things that are kind of disturbing. What is your perspective on the involvement of big corporation in the sort of turning and advancement of the feminist ideology?
Feminism is Sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say I'd heard something that I can't validate because I didn't actually research it. It was just something that was told to me by someone that I trust, so I don't think it's completely false. But I just haven't researched it. But I had heard that there was actually some evidence that there were some large financial figures that were involved in pushing the feminist narrative, and it makes sense, especially when you look at Hollywood, because big corporations, even governments, maybe want women working because it's better for GDP.
Well, that hadn't even occurred to me, but that does make a lot of sense. The latter point about, wanting women working because of
Yeah.
GDP, and especially as well, like in the past, for example, like you had more single parent, a lot of families were able to get by on just the father working, but now most people, a lot of the time women can't be housewives even if they want to because,
Can't afford it.
they can't afford it. But regarding corporations funding it, so feminism is actually the contemporary feminism started in America in the 1960s, and it was a very powerful lobbyist organization, and it was formed by Betty Friedan and Gloria Steinem. They formed the National Organization for Women. And so one of the things there's a really good docudrama miniseries actually called Mrs. America, which really shows just how bureaucratic feminism was, because essentially it was these group of very radical leftist women, and they wanted to reform the Equal Rights Amendments. So effectively, they wanted to make it so that women and men were completely equal under the law, meaning that women would have to be drafted for the military, meaning that housewives and older wives would lose child support and alimony. And, effectively, women and men would be totally equal under the law, which would just take away any kind of privileges for women. And Phyllis Schlafly was a really important anti-feminist activist because she criticized the Equal Rights Amendment, and she said that wasn't it would be unfair for like housewives and mothers who the feminists didn't care about,
Yeah.
and just for women in general, because women don't want to be drafted for the war. Women are not as strong as men and physically, and
Well, but to be fair,
yeah, so
very few people want to be drafted to war, men or women.
oh no, of course, but effectively, like the whole thing it's really a lobbyist group. So I would say that there's definitely something to that. I don't have any actual evidence right on that, but in terms of feminism as a lobbyist group, I mean, just look at the UN Women. The UN Women, Emma Watson's whole speech. The UN Women is a feminist organization, and it's about gender equality, but it's really about advancing the feminist movement.
Do you guys know anything about the Tea Party? Have you heard about not the Boston Tea Party, but the Tea Party the political party?
No.
Like the far right kind of.
They're pretty far right, but so they cropped up. I think it was in 2008, 2010 is when they really solidified their power in Congress, and they did solidify their power in Congress and in the House, and so it's a big problem because they're not politicians and they're not good people. The thing is, the Tea Party cropped up as a basic reaction to stagnant wages, misrepresentation, a poor housing market. Like it was just people saying, "Hey, we're tired of things being this way. We want." But it was very quickly co-opted secretly. And if you go back and look now, you can very, very, very clearly, and it's super plain. It's easy to look at, see that nearly their entirety after they got started, they started having functions and events cropping up all over the place, and their whole thing was that we're completely leaderless. We're just a movement of the people. There is no central figure commanding us. But if you go back and look, nearly the entire movement was paid for by the Koch brothers, David and Charles Koch. Yeah, they started funding, and then they funded them, and then when they got to Congress, they passed Prosperity for America, which basically took all the limits off of government donation or donations to campaign donations from corporations and other entities. So now it made them secret, so that you don't have to reveal who's giving you donations, and it removed any limitations to how much you could give in donations. So the Koch brothers, almost single-handedly using the Tea Party as a vehicle, got Prosperity for America passed, which just basically gave them the ability to buy elections. And so that's a movement it was a political movement for political reasons, started grassroots and was quickly co-opted by some financial bigwig who say, hey, there's an opportunity here. And so that's what I was told happened to feminism. I don't know that that's true. It might be an interesting thing to research a little bit when you get time. But
it would be. I mean, it's probably difficult to find whatchamacallit resources on that. Just a quick diversion. Somebody in the comments just asked, have you seen the Nora Vincent's documentary? Does that ring a bell to either of you?
The Nora
No.
what?
Nora Vincent documentary?
No.
I'm not sure. That does sound, I don't know why that rings a bell. Does that something to do with something? Just because somebody in the comments was asking that. Yeah, I mean, yeah, regarding the whole thing of, you know, lobbyist organizations being funded, I do personally agree that actually it's usually there's some kind of investor behind the scenes who wants to push this. I mean, that's really what the whole woke bullshit really is as well. Like, because wokeism is really just an extension of feminism, and it's really essentially about this whole it's really just all a lobbyist organization. I mean, it's a similar thing, I think, with Black Lives Matter as well, because Black Lives Matter, in theory, is a really fantastic idea, especially in America for African Americans, you know, to actually gain justice for Black lives. Sorry?
So conceptually, Black Lives Matter being about Black people not being overly persecuted by police or profiled. So that's lovely conceptually, but the Black Lives Matter organization is a farce that was just
basically just something created by the Democrats. Yeah.
It all comes down to money. That was kind of my question earlier. I'm trying to figure out. I was just
I think that I agree. I mean, I think with feminism, that's definitely it. I mean, it's hard to find those kind of resources, but effectively, I think the best way is to just look at it as, you know, it's really about power for, you know, this kind of group of, you know, extremely I think it's really just about these very extreme left, because also as well with feminism, so most of the kind of feminist activists of the 60s and the 70s, they then later moved into academia, and that's where you ended up with them creating all these studies like gender studies and women's studies, and, you know, creating this idea of gender being a social construct, because, you know, you had female academics like Germaine Greer and Andrea Dworkin and, you know, Judith Butler, and they all created these kind of ideas. Yeah, and they all started to...
Sally Miller Gerhardt, I think in California. Sally Miller Gerhardt. She was probably the worst of the worst. She was the one who started...
Like Valerie Solanas.
I'm not familiar with her, but yeah, Sally Miller Gerhardt was the one who... I don't know if she was the first, but she was certainly the most elaborate teacher of the movement of genocide of men. So to reduce the male population down to 10% of the, and so she literally taught this, like, so the, you know, you see.
How do you spell her name? Sally
Miller. Sally Miller. Like M-I-L-L
Gerhardt.
And G-E-A.
Yeah, you should look up Valerie Solanas.
Okay. So you know that the future is feminine. The idea, like, so you look at that and we go, oh, that's lovely. Women are going to have opportunity. It's about that comes back to Sally's lectures and her doctrine of the future is female because we're going to murder literally boys either through aborting male fetuses or executing them post birth.
Look at my fucking book.
That in an American,
oh my god!
That's your people's fault, Brandon.
I'm sorry.
For that, your
people's fault. Wait, it's your fault. I was listening, but then that came out and that completely threw me.
I was taking this circuit.
My people, listen. I don't know.
America is a very extreme country. I mean, it's like you've got these extreme nice people and then these extreme crazy extremists. You've got these kind of extreme Christian fundamentalists, and then you've got these extreme feminists, and then you've got this extreme overweight.
This is my take on it. As someone who actually lives here, okay, my take on it is this. We're not a whole lot different, honestly, as far as population makeup than most other places. It looks like we are because we are a little different in how open and free people are and feel expressing their ideas publicly.
Yeah.
We do not have
And
that.
it's just got a bigger population.
Yeah, and obviously the
gonna have more
loudest
population.
voices are always going to be the one with the craziest
It's
positions.
true, of
And
course.
that's so
Yeah.
like I can't tell you it bothers me. I understand it, and it's so weird. It's kind of like any other conversation about either being a man, being a white man, being a straight man, being an American. It kind of falls into the same, or even being a Texan. Even here in the United States, how many times I hear the statements that I understand but still get under my skin of people in other states saying, I know what we do. We take all these crazy right-wing fundamentalists, we ship them to Texas. They want to be that way anyway. I'm like, no, we don't. No, we don't.
Yeah.
Stop making
No,
us
I
the
agree,
look.
actually.
Texas,
Yeah.
like for instance,
That must
Texas
be irritating,
46% blue last year, Democrat. We were 46, 47%. I don't want to say liberal, but Democrat.
No, I mean
Last year.
liberal is another term that's completely been not.
It's not
Oh
being used
god,
anymore.
that no, the term liberal is actually not. Yeah, I mean,
Especially
because
here.
I'm an actual liberal.
Yeah, especially here. Here, liberal means
Woke.
just right of center. That's what liberal
Where
means here.
American liberal is progressive. Yeah. Left-wing
Yeah,
progressive.
Yes.
American liberal means being. So you mean being just left of center? You mean?
No.
Right.
I'm talking about if you, in our place, yeah. But if you look at the political spectrum around American being an American liberal, which would be Joe Biden, would be an American liberal.
Yeah.
And he's not. He's a little conservative. He's a little on the right. If you look at it globally, if you look at, like, say, the UK spectrum or other places.
Yeah, but in
he's not in the
America,
center.
he's considered being left of center because America
Yes,
is like
sure.
so
That's kind of the
very,
point.
very much more right wing
That's
than
my
like.
point. Yeah, is that
Yeah.
So when I say
like
actually,
in
I mean
England, like if I went to America, I'd be considered a socialist.
yeah,
Even though I
yeah.
hate
and they're for the
Universal
devil,
health.
by the way.
Huh?
And therefore the devil. Socialism is
universal health.
not accepted socially here. It's very difficult.
Bernie Sanders.
And then you tell people,
Yeah, oh my god, no. Bernie Sanders is not a socialist. He was a social democrat. I think people don't understand as well. People don't understand socialism. They understand communism.
They
They
don't.
don't really understand what these things are actually mean. Like
So-
socialism, because I don't like socialism. Like I don't agree with communism's because socialism is really just the road to communism. As socialism and communism means a society in which the money is owned by the workers and is equally distributed along the workers, meaning that everyone becomes fucking poorer, essentially. Like socialism means equality of outcome. I don't support socialism because socialism is anti-capitalism.
I don't know. I don't have. That's a whole different conversation. I don't know that.
It is complicated because
here's the thing. I have my issues with. I think this because I talk to a lot of people who have very strong views on both sides of this, and they're always advocating for one or the other. And my opinion is pretty specific in that I don't think you can have a socialist nation or a strictly capitalist nation, or you cannot run an entire country of people based on a single ideology.
Yes, that I agree with. Well, I'm a social capitalist, which is actually a fusion. It's basically capitalism with social reforms, which is what we have in England.
Yeah, for me, my idea is, look, capitalism is great. Capitalism is great for less wealthy people with less wealth privilege. I don't know how to put that. People who are less wealthy, like classes and groups who are less. Capitalism is amazing. The problem is whenever you get to people who already have or have already gained hundreds of millions of dollars and are getting richer, capitalism becomes a problem for the society as a whole. When you have your Jeff Bezos or your Elon Musk's, and so you need
which is
checks.
why we need. Yes, I agree. Regulated capitalism. So the thing is as well, because for example, I was actually thinking about this myself earlier. Like, I'm an artist, and a lot of artists are very left, and they'll say, oh, money is evil. But for me, I turn around and say, don't you want to be paid for your art? Don't you want to earn money? Like, shouldn't we aspire to create a world where everybody is able to be affluent?
No,
like, not necessarily a millionaire.
We should aspire for Star Trek. You know that, right?
Well, yeah, we should aspire for a world where everybody is affluent in some degree, and we should aspire, we shouldn't have a world where people are poor. And I think this whole idea of saying, this is the problem I have with like all this leftist, Marxist, communist, socialist, feminist, it all seems to be about suppressing people's potential. And I just think, shouldn't we instead be turning it around and saying, let's create a world where everybody can actually achieve a lot? And we can only build that world.
So it's a different conversation, but I would be interested to hear your ideas of what you just said. You said that being leftist, the communist is a different conversation, but you mentioned a few things, but you said leftist. What particularly are you talking about that are from leftist ideologies that are focused on limiting people's potential?
So feminism, first of all, I think feminism limits women's, because feminism is a left-wing ideology and it limits women's potential, I think, because it says,
I have a different view.
Well, it comes from
that perspective on you. I think maybe it's because of where I am, but feminism is very. There's a lot of right-wing feminists.
Well, I'm talking about classical, like post-1960s feminism. So classically, feminism is very. Of course, there's now right-wing women who call themselves feminists, but classically, feminism is really about power for left-wing women. It's really anti-capitalism, really anti-family. You know, so use the family as a patriarchal institution. It comes from all this, comes from Marxism, really. Yeah, which we were talking about.
Who were you born, Brandon?
Sorry, what?
What? How old are you?
Who are you talking to?
Brandon.
I'm 40.
You. Yeah, me too. So
you guys are the same age. So I'm like a lot younger. I'm 25.
So in the 90s, there was this. You probably missed this, Serena, where
I was born in 97.
Where when me and Brandon were growing up, feminism was all about female power. Like all the bumper stickers.
Yes.
Exactly. Spice Girls.
So that's known as corporate feminism, which isn't. So that is not what I describe as being actual feminism. I think I've covered this in previous videos because in the 1990s and the early 2000s, that idea of feminism was known as corporate feminism, and it was effectively this idea of girl power. And I actually think in many ways that was a good thing because it was actually it was pro women, but it wasn't anti men.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. And that's
me too.
It was actually experientially and seeing it and its effect on women. There wasn't this thing of women are victims. It was women can do everything a man can do. That was the defining thing. And that was the ongoing rivalry. And women would join in with men's sports, and we'd sort of give each other shit, but you'd go and do it, and it was kind of fun. It wasn't.
And there was this sense of like people would make the same comments back then. Oh, but what about this? You guys can't do this. Like we would be able to talk about that in circles with people that we knew, and we got offended, or it was like he said, when you got take the piss out of each other, plays of sports or whatever, and there was an acknowledgement of this is true, this is real, but it's not you or us in this conversation.
So the girl power movement, I always kind of like to stress this because this is where the idea of choice feminism came from. That feminism means women having choices and women being empowered. That isn't actually feminism with a capital F. That is I would just describe that as women's advocacy, because I think the core defining thing of feminism is really the idea of two things: patriarchy and gender roles. So feminism is against gender roles in the sense that it's against men and women having it. It says gender is a social construct. There's no such thing as gender social constructs, and we live in a patriarchy where women are oppressed, and those are the two core qualities of feminism. So I guess you could say, because we're the kind of really, I guess you could say the kind of, because feminism was really like pretty shit between the 1960s and 80s, and it kind of softened and became this more girl power in the 90s, 2000s, and now this kind of 2010s to present version of feminism.
Yes.
I would almost say there's almost been you could say three key ways. We kind of had radical feminism, then liberal feminism. Now we have intersectional feminism, which is just a worse version of radical feminism. And the intersectional feminism movement now is really where this whole woke nonsense comes from, where we have people being oppressed class. So what I was saying effectively earlier about leftist ideologies, specifically rooted in neo-Marxism, suppressing people, is that essentially, this is, again, it's just my opinion, but it's based on this idea that people are oppressed, people are victims of the state, therefore we need to overthrow the state and establish a world where we all equal in the sense that we all have equality of outcome. And to me, like a lot of, you know, extreme, for example, communists, for example, they'll say, oh, you know, because communism is the advocacy for a moneyless, classless, and stateless society, and they want to get rid of money, they want to get rid of the state, they want to get rid of families. Well, Star Trek isn't actually communist,
No money,
because
no
there's
class,
still people
no
who run
state.
businesses.
Well,
there's
no money. They don't have
well,
money.
there's still they have business. It's not really
They do.
comparable.
They produce because they can, but they don't have money. There's no money.
It's not really comparable.
Gene Roddenberry was kind of
it's utopian. It's
suggesting
kind of
that, like, but yeah,
did he get some flack for being for being the people were saying that he was communist? There were some people who
because I've heard people make this argument, but Star Trek in many ways was actually, because, you know, it had people still running. I mean, look, I've not really seen, you know, I've only seen like a few episodes of the original Star Trek. I don't know if it's really comparable, because it's like a different one, it's fiction, and two, it's not it's like a different type of society.
So it was 1967, 64.
Yeah, that was different. TNG was.
He had a Russian, like, on the board of an American flagship. He had a Russian black woman. Like, there were many women on, and so the idea, and none of them earned money. They were
ignoring the short skirts. But yeah.
Yeah.
We're still trying to get people to watch, I guess. But yeah.
But it was
they
so
can't do that anymore because it's sexist.
It was,
you know, actually the women. Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah.
Well, there's something really funny actually about the short skirts, because I remember reading somewhere that the women actually wanted to wear short skirts because they didn't want to look like men. The women in the original Star Trek, they were like, because initially they were like, no, we're going to wear trousers, but they were like, no, we want skirts because we want to look like women. But nowadays they were like, oh, they're wearing mini skirts, that's sexist because they're being sexual.
Well, that's an interesting conversation, because you were talking, and this is what I was thinking. When you talk about this, this is what feminism is, and it's just what it is. Like, that's the definition, and that's what people used. That's what it used to be back in when we were talking about back in our time when we were younger. And when we talk about it, that's what feminism is, and this is what it's been sort of warped into. And it's just a weird perspective shift when you talk to people who were raised in different times. And that made me think of this, because whenever you're talking about that, there's a lot of things that if you talk to a woman in the 20s or even further back or whatever, that they didn't want to be drafted. They didn't want that right. The right to be drafted. They didn't want to have to go work in the coal mines. You know, there was the majority of women were happy doing what they were doing, or at least, I mean, even if it's a small majority, from what I've been able to find, it was a majority of women who liked their life. I think that, and then now you look at it and it feels oppressive, but it's only oppressive if people don't want to do it. You know, if you're so today we have a lot of people who are judging an entire history, and you were talking about this when we talked. You went all the way back to pre-agriculture, like you were way back there, and we judge what that looked like based on what our society is today. Today, that would make no sense. It doesn't make any sense to have an expectation of housewife on everybody because of the state of our economy, because of the services, because of the way it is. Our economy is no longer a manufacturing economy. We're no longer industrial, you know, so it doesn't make sense that men dominate the workforce. It wouldn't, back then it did, because, you know, if you have people in a coal mine or that's like the biggest thing, coal mines, lumber mills, that kind of stuff, you would expect larger bodied, more physically strong people to do that job. It's not that way anymore, so it doesn't make sense. But then you can't go back and then judge previous years on this paradigm that we now have today. That happens a lot. I think that's a lot of the problem as well.
Yeah,
she's reading comments.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, you know, I do think as well we do need to. Well, this is why I try and differentiate feminism from women's advocacy, because I think, you know, anyone could be a women's advocacy. Anyone can support. Well, it's not. The thing is, it's not really your fault. It's because the
No.
word feminism has basically been used to describe. So the problem as well is that feminism, as it started in the 1960s, was really actually a political movement, but it essentially. So there was a woman named Helen Gully Brown who, and I think in the 90s or early or late 80s, she was the editor of Cosmopolitan, and she was one of the pioneers of the whole, like, I guess you could say, sex positive feminism, which is all about, girl power. And she published this book called Sex and the Single Girl, which inspired Sex and the City, which is one of my favorite TV shows, which was all about this idea of feminism as being more about, celebrating, women in the workforce and women being empowered and women having sexual agency. And, she was very pro, female sexuality, and she, was very glamorous, and she was like happily married. And it's really funny because the earlier feminists like Betty Friedan and Kate Millis and Rita Mae Brown, they didn't like her. They didn't like Helen Gully Brown because she was very, she wasn't a feminist in the sense that in fact, she wasn't even really a feminist. It's the fact that she used the word feminist to describe something which wasn't really feminism. Because, she was married for like 50 years. She was very pro men, actually. She loved men. She, was very she had these very, probably with someone I probably would have gone along with well, actually. And she was like very, very liberal. And this is where we had the whole idea of the kind of choice feminism and women empowerment and feminism being about giving women choice. But the problem is that, as I see it, that's not what true feminism was about. True feminism, as pioneered by Friedan and Steinem, was about smashing the patriarchy. True feminism is anti-men, it's anti-marriage, it's anti-family, it's it's not about giving women choice. It's about liberating women from this patriarchy, it's created construct. So it's not really anyone's fault. It's just the problem is that feminism is a term that has become so distorted that people nowadays, and that's why people are so confused, because people think, oh, but surely feminism means equality and girl power. But we have these women talking about equality and girl power, and they call themselves feminists. But then we have these other women who talk about wanting to smash the patriarchy, and they call themselves feminists. Who are the real feminists? Right. And the truth is that I think the whole girl power thing is a very good thing, but I don't think that is the same as feminism, because feminism is a political movement. And I think we do need to distinguish the two, because once we do that, it actually makes it much easier, because then we can actually see that most people are not feminists. Most people who call themselves feminists are really just women's advocates or
that's why
pro-egalitarians.
I like what you did with the word, whatever. You have the term radical feminism, and then you had, I think you called it liberal feminism.
Yeah.
I like what you did there. That's part of language that we were talking about earlier.
Oh yeah.
This thing that does not have a clear definition, and that is not used consistently to describe the same thing.
It's very inconsistent.
You have people who use it to describe the just women in the workforce having autonomy, being able to make their own choices, and then you have the others, and so they use feminism as this, and then when you go to the more extreme, and they use it as this. That's different, but then when you say, "Oh, I don't like feminism," you're hitting every marker across that.
So when I'm talking about feminism, I am talking about specifically radical feminism and intersectional feminism. But to me, liberal feminism doesn't really exist. To me, liberal feminism is just liberalism. Yeah. I don't even think liberal feminism is really a real thing. I think it's just liberalism per se.
That sounds like it's not masculinity; it's just behavior. That sounds like argument. It's the same thing.
Yeah, toxic masculinity. Yeah, absolutely. And I completely agree. It is. And I think the problem is that most liberal feminists, like, for example, most liberal feminists probably have the same opinions as me. It's just they call themselves feminists. And I think the danger in calling themselves feminists is they're aligning themselves with a movement which is affiliated with the likes of Sally, what's her face, that Anna was talking about earlier. And it's like, I don't want to be affiliated with those women. So to distinguish myself from them, I don't want to say that I'm a liberal feminist or a choice feminist or an anything feminist. I just don't want to be a feminist, period. I want to keep feminism in its little patriarchy smashing box. And
the issue is that most people if they don't want to lose their job or other position, they have to say that they are a feminist, because if they say if they don't, then they will lose their job, or or maybe they may not get fired, but they won't get the next promotion. Or, so for you, Zarina, now, like, you coming out, like, I think times are actually changing. But if you went to apply for some jobs, you would not get them because if they found this, they would. You certainly in Australia. You know, I know in the UK too. Like, because I know other people who have had their careers just totally destroyed by disavowing feminism, because now you're part of the patriarchy, and so you're one of us, not them, and so they will punish you.
That's terrible. But to bring it
Yeah.
back to what I was saying about left-wing politics, this is why I think capitalism is so important. So when I say as well capitalism, what does capitalism means? Acquiring wealth, right? Selling things for profit. And
Money at all
capitalism,
cost.
when used in a positive way, I know as well, I know it's tough because I know America is very, very extremely right.
Hey,
But when money is viewed as a source of abundance and a source of freedom, people creating their own money as a way to, so that you don't have to rely on the state or some boss. You can be the one who's in control of your business. You can be the one who's in control of your destiny. I think that's a society we should aspire for. I think we should aspire for a society where everyone is economically self-sufficient in a way that's positive. And that's why it's so fantastic we have the rise of YouTube, Patreon. My boyfriend actually talks about something really interesting. He talks about the idea of a donations-based economy where, like, instead of people selling services, people make products and then they gain their money through donation. I mean, my only worry is, like, you know, would people get enough? Because I think, you know, I think aspiring to have lots of wealth is a good thing. I don't think people shouldn't aspire to have wealth, because I think as well, when you tell people money is the root of all evil, you essentially limit their ability from wanting to gain wealth. But the problem is that a lot of people, well, it's not even a lot of people, it's just a few tiny proportion of very wealthy people are also very nasty and psychopathic. But again, the majority of people are not bad people. It's only a small minority. And, you know, for every rich psychopath, there's also a poor psychopath. So really, like, I think the whole idea of my whole view of, I guess you could say, ethical capitalism is a model of capitalism, which means that people, well, I mean, my view of ethical capitalism is, because I consider myself a practicing capitalist. You know, I make money online, I sell my books, I do what I like, and I think that my whole goal and idea is that everyone is able to thrive, and we do that by creating a society where everybody has their basic needs met. So, for example, through the UBI or negative income tax or something, so everyone's able to. It's not socialism; it's social reforms. Because I think as well,
ideas.
It's socialist ideas, but as well, because as well, the thing is, it's not socialism because also socialism is actually anti-capitalism. Like, social capitalism isn't quite the same as socialism. Like, social capitalism means supporting capitalism with social reforms, whereas socialism is social. There's a really good video, this guy actually breaks it down, where he talks about how social democracy or social capitalism is just a friendly version of capitalism. It's not actually socialism, which is true.
So the way I look at those, or the way I understand those things, is if you say capitalism, right, then you're saying capitalism, and whenever you say capitalism, it's a thing in and of itself. And capitalism, at its peak, is just the ability, the freedom to make money without restriction.
Yeah,
That's what capitalism is. The
it's not
problem
really a
is
good or bad thing.
Sure, surely not on its own, but just like everything else, nothing is on its own. There is no vacuum.
Yeah,
And like you were saying, there are always psychopaths, sociopaths. There are always these bad actors. They're always there. Any system, including socialism, communism, doesn't matter how far to either side of the spectrum you go. Any system is going to be subject to the dangers of being corrupted by bad actors.
Yes.
Including capitalism. The problem is that if so, when you're saying social capitalism, what I'm hearing is a democratic socialism.
But again, it's not democratic social. This is again the problem with words.
No. So all I'm saying is this: like you said, a social capitalist. Is that what you?
Yeah, social capitalism. Right. It's also known as, you could say, social democracy or a social market economy. Okay, it's what they have in Scandinavia, basically.
My idea, my thought is basically the same as yours. Like the idea that, look, here is a basic standard of living. Nobody should be homeless. Nobody should have to choose between eating and getting medicine. Nobody, like, that should not be a problem. Those things are basic. If we take care of those things for every individual, then make as much money as you want and get all the extra things.
Yes.
By the way, that's my understanding of a social democratic socialist.
Well, that's not socialist though, because in a socialist society, the idea is that wealth is equally distributed among everybody.
Yeah.
Socialism is actually a road to communism. So
Well,
can't use
it
socialism
is
as
a
a
road to
step
communism.
towards communism.
Socialism is just about the state, the government existing to supply need and doing that, like giving people what they
A
need.
welfare state,
Yeah,
which
so I don't support that.
the
Well,
UK is
if you define need as
most
having a
extreme.
house and food, then you do support that.
Well, okay, so what I mean is I don't support a socialist state where everyone's dependent on the government, because also in a socialist state you can't own property, you can't own land.
Yeah,
Socialism is against
Well,
land
that's
and
probably
property
more
ownership.
communist. So like under the
that's the end
Chinese
result.
CCP.
Communism, the USSR. Well, the thing is, they
um,
are similar. The thing is, communism is really basically just the step before socialism is really just a step before communism. You know, it's the problem is that because a lot of people conflate socialism with social capitalism, because social capitalism is just capitalism with social reforms.
I've never even heard the term before today.
Yeah, a lot of
I
people
used to be,
haven't had it.
I used to be a Christian anarchist. I don't know if we haven't.
That's very common. I know that
Yeah.
actually, it's common. My
Wow.
friends,
I've never heard that term
fiance.
either.
Christian anarchism is very
Sorry,
common.
I didn't mean
But
to laugh. That just
yeah.
caught me.
So
That caught me.
do you guys know Leo Tolstoy?
Yeah.
Of course.
Tolstoyism. Yeah, so Tolstoy kind of started the idea, and and when I read him and his influence on Gandhi and Martin Luther King, so I really that really resonated with me. So yeah, so and that idea is that it's kind of a voluntary subculture where you share everything in common. So I set up a charity. So a charity is a tax-free. So Liberty, Liberty is the name of the charity, and so it was everything was like people would donate into it. It was a tax-free environment, but then the community cared for the community. So the idea was to be it's anarchist because in the idea, like not in the Hollywood idea of the word, but in extreme personal responsibility. And then within personal responsibility, there's the idea is communitarianism, not communism, communitarianism, and so the community is responsible for members of the community. So homeless people would come in, and they would become a member of the community. They would contribute to the community, and the community would coordinate housing for them. And it was fucking ridiculous. It was. It sounds lovely, and I saw, a lot of people. It worked. It did work in part, but it just doesn't work.
No, communism and anarchism. I mean, anarchism is its own thing because you have anarcho-communism, and then you have anarcho-syndicalism, and
I'm curious.
Anarcho-capitalism is just libertarianism.
What was the downfall of that?
It's idealistic, right? So it takes the assumption that, like, I'm very idealistic, and I'm very hardworking. So I'm not the type of person who is motivated by finances. So I'm motivated by working hard and producing good quality services and whatever. The problem is a lot of people are selfish and will just enter into a system, and they will see that as an opportunity to take from the community, and especially when you're in a sub community in a broader community, it just drew that type of personality into it, and it was So, and it was reading Abraham Maslow. The Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like he wrote a couple of great books. The Farther Reaches of Human Nature, I think it was, and he talks about. Have you read it?
No, but I know of Abraham Maslow and his hierarchy of needs.
Sure.
Just to say, guys, sorry, we've been talking for about over 2 hours now, so should we start to wrap up in maybe like 10 minutes or so? Or 5 to 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Because I think we're getting a bit tired. But the economic discussion is interesting. I do want to reiterate, though, just to be absolutely clear, so I do support things like, universal healthcare, which we have in the UK. I support having a welfare system. Like, I'm not against any of that. The problem, I think the problem is because America is so economically much further to the right than the UK that any kind of social reform automatically is viewed as socialist, whereas here we don't view that as socialist, we just view it as a social reform. But we're still a capitalist country. Like, the UK is a capitalist country. So it's just a capitalistic country where you can get free contraception and you can get, your health is provided for by the government, by the state, by taxpayers.
Well, so that I can better understand your perspective on it. So when you say UBI, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're talking. That doesn't. Now I'm for that. I think that would be done in the right way. Would be an amazing step in the right direction. So we agree. That's not. You don't consider that a socialist policy?
Well, it's a socialistic policy, but it's not socialism, because it also depends, because UBI, I think, has its pros and cons. Like, obviously, the good side of because also I kind of think, like, in an ideal world, we wouldn't need an UBI because everyone would just earn enough money that they wouldn't need to depend on the government to get money. That's really, I think, how it should be. I don't think people should
can't earn at all.
Yeah, it's just disabled people. People with, I know this, I have benefits for various reasons as well, but that's different. But as in, like, in an ideal world, people who can work would be able to actually get paid in, like, enough money that they wouldn't need to have to rely on the state to get money, kind of thing. So, but I think, UBI is not really a good, or I think there's definitely pros and cons to it. I mean, there's also the idea of negative income tax, which is where, like, I also think there's a case to be made for, like, maybe people, maybe only people earning more than, like, I don't know, 25,000 a year, for example, should pay tax. Maybe, because then that means that people who are earning 20K a year get to actually keep their money and can then potentially earn more without having to just give away to the government. What I mean?
What do you think about a max income tax?
What's a max income tax?
The idea that once you hit a certain income, that's it. Everything else goes to taxes. 95% of it would go. We used to do that here in the United States.
Oh, God, that's awful.
There was a time here in the United States, you made over a certain dollar, you were paying 90% in taxes.
Yeah,
now it was progressive. It's not like, basically, you make $1 million and you're paying 17%. You make from that million to the next 5, you're paying 25%. From 5 million to 10 million, you're paying 50%, and then over 20 million. For every dollar you make over 20 million, you're paying 80-90%. That's how we used to do things. And now the numbers
it's terrible. I think the tax system is really bureaucratic, and I think it's really designed to just give money to the government. I don't think that we should be giving so much money to the government. I do think that, because the problem is that, in my opinion, the governments don't really serve people's interests, and especially, like, they're supposed to, but they don't. There's a lot of bureaucracy and corruption. So, I think max income tax is a terrible idea. I mean, I like the idea of flat tax.
Isn't that kind of a cyclical argument? Because the reason the government doesn't serve the people the way it's supposed to is because they're busy serving corporations so that they can make more money, or themselves so they can make more money. So if you curtail that, then you would expect that to curtail as well. I mean, the reason for government corruption is to make more money because they're giving tax breaks to corporations, or they're passing laws that make things easier for coal miners or easier for the oil industry, so they're getting big donations and big money checks. But if that
stopped, is the positive side of center-left politics. Like,
So if that's something, then the corruption would go less. They would actually do their job. They used to do their job in the United States. It was not great, but it was way better than it is now before the 80s. There was a real middle class here in the United States up until it really was. And since the 80s, Glass-Steagall got repealed. All kinds of crazy bets started getting made with all of ordinary people's money. There almost no regulations on corporate spending, and it's just gotten worse.
Yeah, so no, I agree with you, actually, that the problem is really that corporations have far too much power. So I think that the monetary power should go to people who are actually creating, businesses to like the actual people who are working,
Yeah.
who are actually, and also people doing, because I think as well, it depends on what kind of work. 'Cause I think right now, like the way I see it, the people who are earning the most money, for example, are bankers and financial investors. I actually think that the people who are earning the most money should be like creatives and innovators, people who are actually contributing and providing like actual real value.
Right. Yeah, you're putting the
It's
power,
effectively,
the wealth back in the power of the people who produce, right? But back in their hands.
yes, effectively. But the thing is that I don't think that money should be like, I definitely don't believe in max income tax. I think that's actually
Well,
terrible.
personally,
idea.
I think if you were
that,
making $200 billion a year, you made enough.
yeah, but
made
it's
enough.
also like, why, like, because also most extremely wealthy people give their money to charity. It's like they give a lot to charity. They do a lot of philanthropy work. I mean,
Yeah.
J.K. Rowling was like, it's the thing. It's like, why should all of that money be going into the government? Like, I think that the ideal society should be that everybody pays enough tax so there's enough so that everyone's basic needs are covered, i.e. by universal healthcare and benefits for those who need it. But ideally, people should be able to create, generate their own wealth through labor that's productive and that is actually serving themselves, not serving big corporations or the government who will just take the money.
I mean, these are really complicated issues because you have to.
They are complicated. And there's a lot, there's no one.
The people who are making these huge incomes that would even come. Huh?
Sorry, no, you go.
The people who are making these huge incomes that would even enter into the conversation of a max income are not people who are working the hardest. They're CEOs. They're owners.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean,
I'm pretty sure. Look, put it this way. So you're the CEO of a giant corporation. You go to meetings.
You probably are working the hardest.
You work really hard. You go down to your lower income workers, the ones who are just day laborers, who are part time, who are just working, and they're working. Look at Amazon as a great example. Working anywhere from 35 to 70 hours a week in non-climate controlled areas, puking because they can't, because it's too hot, having to pee in water bottles. They're working harder, picking up the heavy things, moving the heavy things, putting things together. They're working harder. I promise.
Well, that's why they should be getting paid more, because they're doing extremely hard job. They should be getting paid more for their labor. So you saying
there's a gendered issue in there as well, in that so 93% of workplace fatalities are male. So men men do all the dangerous work and they're expected to do that. But men also work longer hours, and because of hypergamy, women choose to marry men who earn more than them. And so for men to make more money, they have to do more dangerous work. So there's kind of like a danger loading. But then we also, like, if we live, so Sweden's got a flat tax rate, but most the UK, most countries have a tiered tax system. So we hear about the gender pay gap, which isn't true. So women just work hours. But there's some biological thing there where women also need to give,
if they want to have a family,
yeah. So there's, so the state should step in and men should provide for women, in some way. But men are providing for women in the form of tax. So we never have this conversation. So men do it by the way of risking their lives. So some men die and some men just risk their lives, and more men do more difficult work, but men work longer hours, and men pay a higher percentage of tax than women do because men
giving more of that money to the government.
Exactly. And but have you guys ever heard that ever said ever?
No.
No.
Not in that way.
We're not even allowed to talk about it.
And that's a very interesting way of putting it, actually. And it's also it just shows really how, I think really bureaucracy is a huge problem. And I think, like, my ideal economy would be an economy that was that was all about social enterprise, an economy where the people who made the most money were creatives, the people who were actually creating, be that, scientists, inventors, artists, content creators, whatever. And taxes were paid, but taxes, because I think that people pay, honestly, I know this sounds a bit crazy, but I do think people actually pay too much tax. I think taxes should only be used for things that are needed, like healthcare, basic human rights, benefit system, basic human rights.
Yeah, we don't even do that here.
Yeah, no. And maybe I don't know, whatever other else taxes are used for, like
roads, infrastructure, school, those kinds of things.
Yeah, like basic public services. Yeah.
I say that, by the way, I say that coming from a state that did so poorly with our infrastructure that we lost power for nearly 2 months, 2 winters ago, and so many people died because they passed some regulations or laws that took us out of the national power grid so that we could do our own regulations, so that we could hire those people that our government wanted to hire here in Texas. And what that left us with was wind turbines that didn't have any insulation against freezing because we're in Texas. So we had no insulation. So when it froze, they just stopped working and we all lost power and a lot of people died.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, some people might argue that in that situation, I'm not sure to what extent I agree with this, but some people might say that having the private sector come in is better because the private companies would help people more than the government, but I don't know to what extent I agree with that. Yeah. I mean,
I could agree with it. Here's the thing: you could tell me that. I've had people have that argument with me, and I could agree with it if you agree that there needs to be some kind of oversight. Because again, when you say private,
of course, no, I'm not 100%.
Yeah,
I'm not a laissez-faire capitalist.
Because when you say private, you're saying corporate. When you're saying corporate, you're saying capitalist entity, and whenever you're talking about that, they care way more about
private.
Profit.
Doesn't necessarily mean corporate. Private just means a business, a small company.
But if you're talking about a state's power,
then
you're talking corporate. There are no small companies that can handle Texas's power. They would be small.
It's all complicated, isn't it?
There's a city in South Australia called Adelaide. I don't know if you guys heard it, but it's always had significant power issues, just for a bunch of reasons. And I know it was about 5-10 years ago, they were like, it was getting really bad and people were starting to die. And it was Elon Musk. So the South Australian government paid Elon Musk to go in. And so there was no solutions, none of the political parties. And we've got a 4-party system in Australia. All of them fucked it up. Everyone fucked it. Like the right wingers, the left wingers, no one had a solution. And we paid Elon Musk and he came in and fixed it in a matter of months. And I had a friend who he was an engineer and worked on the project. It was incredible. He fixed it in record time. And so the state government paid a billionaire to come in and he did it cheaper. Our government couldn't fix it on any level, on any tier of government, and we paid $1 billion to come in, and he did it cheaper and better, and it's now like one of the best cities in Australia.
That makes well. I mean, they have a particular.
No, that doesn't.
But and one thing that should be mentioned about what happened here is that that's kind of essentially what happened. I mean, we broke away from the U.S.'s power grid so that we wouldn't have to deal with U.S. federal regulations, which required insulation against all types of weather, inclement weather. We did that because it never gets cold here. We don't need that. It costs us money. And then basically Greg Abbott, our person, he found somebody who was willing to give him lots of money and hired his company to run the infrastructure. So it is essentially, it's not private, but it is private because it's all money. It all came back to money.
Collaboration.
Yeah. So, and the thing is, when it comes, like there are all these documents that have been declassified where corporations will do risk assessments on like structures that they've built, bridges or tunnels or causeways or whatever. And they're like, well, if it breaks, we've discovered this problem. It makes it this percentage likely to break way more than way sooner than it should. Yeah. If it breaks, how much money do we stand to lose in lawsuits versus how much if it kills people versus how much money will it take to fix? And if it costs less money to deal with the lawsuits later, they just won't fix it. and let people risk their lives on it. And that's
wrong.
that's the problem. That's why you need regulation.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I think regulations are important, and yeah, you should definitely look up social capitalism or
I
social
will. Actually, I've
social.
written that
I
down.
think the term is social because there's many terms as well. You could look up social democracy, social market economy, because social market economy might be the best idea because that's also an online model or the Nordic model as well. It's all
It's
how
funny.
it all works.
When I type in social capitalism to Google, the first thing that pops up is social capitalism versus social democracy.
Yeah, I
I
mean
think
they're
they're
really
fairly similar.
they
Or at least-
are effectively similar. Yeah, they're just essentially regulated forms of capitalism that involve, you know, welfare and healthcare. But no, I do think that it's I mean, the economics is very complicated, and I do agree as well on the fundamentalist aspects that no, I do fundamentally agree that there's no that you know we can't have 100% socialism, nor can we have 100% laissez-faire capitalism. We do need a merging of different models. But anyway, guys, I think this starts to wrap it up now because I think we're all getting tired. It's been a fantastic chat. We've covered a lot of ground. We should definitely do this again sometime. Thank you both so much for coming. If you have any closing thoughts, please state them now.
No, I don't. Anything I could think to say was just it's just
yeah,
I'm exhausted as well. I can't breathe at all.
Same. I'm so tired.
It's great.
It was really
guys.
great meeting you.
So cool to talk about these extremely complex, tumultuous topics and not hate each other.
Right? I love that.
No, because we're all like mature adults and we're not fucking crazy woke.
You should be able to. Yeah, no, but it's great. Really
we should
cool.
do this again sometime.
Variety, the American, we're like the start of a joke. An Australian, an American, and an English woman walked into a podcast.
It's I realize I'm at a disadvantage in that joke already.
Anyway,
just
fun.
For like really fun. I enjoy talking to people whose perspectives are so different than mine, just for the virtue of having been born someplace else. I'm definitely a little more jaded. I know that I'm a little more.
No, it's fine. I mean, it's okay to be jaded. The world is really messed up. But yeah, just before, by the way, when I click end stream, end broadcast, don't go because I always say that because I always like to just chat behind stage just before we leave. So just to check anything. And so anyway, sorry.
That's future Patreon bait. One day you'll have enough people in here, and when you say that, you can say, "Now, if you want to stick around for that, you join my top tier, $500 a month."
That's capitalism.
That's capitalism.
That's capitalism when it works in your favor. Anyway, thank you for watching Beautiful World. Thank you for having these lovely gentlemen on my channel. We'll probably do this again at some point and end in broadcast in 3, 2, 1.